There we are.
And it says we're live on the channel here, and I know it's going to come up. Tell everybody, this is Greg Allison with Lee Wheelbarger tonight, and we're doing a special. We're going to be talking about some other videos, and oh good, I got that muted. Very good. So we're going to be talking about some other videos and things that's come up, and just a lot of context that we've been kicking around that we think that there needs to be more perspective on certain subjects, that some things that require a little more examination. For example, there was an individual who on the Leak Project who said some stuff I said wasn't so, but maybe there's a bit of miscommunication, but I would point out that this guy has some weaknesses with physics. Maybe needs a little help. Maybe Lee and I can help him out. What do you think, Lee?
Oh yeah, we can definitely help him out, especially on understanding what terminal velocity is.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a couple of points in that video that I found of interest, and one of them was about at 11:45. Let's see if I can cue it up. I'm going to do a share screen, and I'm going to go back over to here, and I see you there, but let's go over to
Hey!
let's go over here to the Leak Project video. Let's see if I can. I love Rex, but so Rex is not a scientist or an engineer. So if one of his speakers is a little off on it, he may not know, especially if they're good at throwing out a lot of words and jargon. This guy is a master of words and jargon, but it seems he needs to do a little more homework on some of these. Let me open this up here. And this guy is, let's see, who is this guy? Is David Serreta, I don't know who says that, claims he's a scientist. Claims he is a scientist.
And an inventor.
Lee's an inventor just like you. And look, he's got a real funky shirt on, so he must have something going on.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Which I experienced. It's amazing when a cabin suddenly just depressurizes. For whatever reason, there's an explosion of the cold, high altitude, low density air mass, meaning the high density air mass in the cabin.
Whoa. See, you hear what he just said? That
Yes.
he says that when a cabin depressurizes, there's an explosion of the low density cold air mass meeting the high density mass inside the cabin. So what's happened? He says that the low density air mass is running into the cabin. That's literally what he says.
No.
It can't happen even. It's not even possible. This is
It's called right. It's called depressurization.
Suddenly depressurizes, which I experienced. It's amazing when a cabin suddenly just depressurizes. For whatever reason, there's an explosion of the cold, high altitude, low density air mass, meaning the high density air mass in the cabin.
It don't come in a cabin from outside.
Correct.
It looks like smoke, and it makes a big sound. I mean, they did it to us in the chamber, and they want to see how you.
So what happens is you're depressurizing, you're losing pressure because the air, when you're depressurizing, runs in one direction, from the high to the low. All physics says that things go from high pressure to low pressure, from high potential to low potential, from high voltage to low voltage. What's in between? Current. The current goes from the high potential to low potential, which means it's blowing outside. So what happens is your pressure inside is dropping, your dew point changes, so you may indeed get a flash of steam or something inside, but it may look like an explosion. And yeah, your ears will probably pop and you're going to get some sound, but his physics is running back. If he thinks that things go from low pressure to high pressure, his command of physics is nowhere. He needs some help.
Lacking.
I can help him out. He needs. I could draw a voltage diagram and explain that to him. With a battery and a resistor, and draw that current there.
The comment that got me that he made was the comment that he had a transmitter that was on the same frequency as hydrogen, and when he turned it on, it would make it rain around his house.
Yeah, I know. I heard that. Boy, If you could do that, anybody can make it rain anywhere, anytime, and that's not hard to do.
Yeah, you just stick your microwave out in the front yard,
Exactly.
plug it into the wall, and then stick your fork down in where the latching mechanism is, and turn it on. And then we can say, hey, it's gonna rain.
Well, if that was true, all our radars would be making it rain.
Absolutely, it would be raining at every single radar everywhere. and I asked, I said, what is the wattage? What is the frequency? And for how long? And what's the gain of the antenna? So, that's all I wanted to know.
Yeah.
And I said right then and there.
I'm going out to Arizona, and I need some rain, so I need to get this down pat.
Yeah, you can get a these new low wattage microwaves for like $75. You just run by Walmart and get one, throw it in the back of your truck. Yeah. You can just be a rainmaker out there all the time. You'll never have to irrigate or buy water or anything.
Miss something else. Frequency of hydrogen. The frequency of hydrogen is not the same as the frequency of the water molecule. So
yes,
he meant to say the water molecule, I'm pretty sure, but he said
that's not what he said.
Hydrogen. You're right.
Yeah,
you did catch that. So here he's talking about terminal velocity. Now this is the one that really got me. It just floored me.
When you get way up there, when I skydived from 30,000 feet in Davis, California, I reached 300 miles an hour in free fall. And when you hit the lower atmosphere, here's another thing. This isn't even stated at all. When you drop from 30,000 feet and you suddenly hit 10,000 feet, it's like jumping into a lake. Okay.
What?
That part's, well, you do hit higher density air, but
right, but it's not like jumping into a lake.
No, but watch this. Listen.
Because the density of the air envelope down here is like liquid. When I hit it, my helmet, which is connected to an oxygen tube to the oxygen supply to my leg, was so suddenly violent, I had to take my hands and hold that oxygen mask on my face as I hit 10,000 feet from 30,000 feet. So if a UAP was going super fast, even 40 to 50,000 miles an hour from above 80,000 feet to sea level, when it hit the lower atmosphere, it would be massive distortion. If it didn't have some type of technology, you're not even talking anti-gravity. I've gone frame by frame through the neighborhood.
Oh, wait a minute. I think I skipped the part I want. Let me go back a little bit. Where you talk maximum terminal velocity. That's what I'm looking for. Let me go back.
Yeah, that's what you want.
I want the maximum terminal velocity comment.
160,000 miles an hour.
He said it's 120,000 miles an hour.
Yeah.
On the radar, but it wouldn't be moving very fast, would it? Because the free fall rate of all naturally falling objects below 15,000 feet is going to be 120,000 miles an hour tops.
Well, no, he said below 20,000 feet.
Right. What do you, you're putting you're putting one of the what is it? One of Elon Musk's rockets behind it to fire it down towards the earth.
Straight down.
Right. And then you're removing all of.
Hey.
What? No, but I'm going to say we have to remove all of the atmosphere of the earth.
Removed all the atmosphere and fired straight down. You're still not getting that much velocity.
Yeah.
Going to orbit, your orbital velocity is 17,500 miles an hour. So let's throw in some other shares here. We're going to go a couple other places and have some looks at some.
That's terminal velocity in free fall. No.
Hang on. I should have just cut that down.
And I don't know if you heard Valentina Zarkova's comment in one of her latest interviews. I thought it was classic, and both my wife and I busted out laughing. She said, a lot of people want to be famous, but most people don't have a big enough brain to be famous. I was like, well, that guy qualifies.
Well, I don't know. The guys that made the Jackass movie got pretty famous.
Yeah, but they were smart enough to make a movie out of it.
Yeah. Well, and they managed not to get killed somehow doing some of that crazy ass shit they did. Pardon my language. I shouldn't say that. I'm gonna ban myself from my own channel now. Pardon me, folks. Sorry about that. But look, what terminal velocity is this right here. It's when the weight or your acceleration at the force of gravity, which is 32 feet per second in a vacuum, matches the drag force, which is the force of the air pressure on you here. When these two forces are matched, you've reached terminal velocity. And terminal velocity for a diver is typically about 200 miles an hour, maybe if your feet are down. If you're free falling belly down, it's like 120 miles an hour. So that diagram right there kind of tells you what it is. You got another, let's click that and you can see it. That's really easy to see. Terminal velocity typically, I'll get this picture get big here. Shoot, I have to go down to terminal velocity. Yeah. There we go. That's one graph. I want to find I was trying to click on that graph that showed how it would go with time typically. There's your weight, there's a diameter in millimeters. That's not the one I'm on. Okay, we'll go back to another one. The equations are pretty simple. Well, maybe not all that simple. Some people, the velocity is like the square root of 2 times the mass and gravity over the density of the air, the area, and a cross-sectional, let's see, CCD is the drag coefficient. Okay, CCD is the drag coefficient. So what you got is you got a diagram like that. If we can go over here, this is Felix Baumgartner when he jumped out of the balloon at almost 100,000 feet, which is 20 miles up. So he was just shy of 20 miles up. Okay, he fell with under 200, about 250 seconds basically, and it shows that his velocity changing over time here. Well, height actually. This is the height. This is the time. He reached terminal velocity pretty much in this region here, but it changes a little bit, drops as you get more into the air because you get more drag from the denser air. That's true. But
yes,
but
so right where you're saying right here is so at about 20,000 feet or so is where he started making the terminal.
That's the inflection.
Yeah, 15. Right. Yeah.
You take the derivative of that, and I'll tell you something. Because acceleration rate changes there. So what derivatives are those kind of things. So I wish my Zoom screen controls would quit popping down. So here's this is typically the equations. Here we go. So your terminal velocity, is a square. That's that square root equation again, and it's proportional to actually to the square of the velocity that you're going down. Is what the drag is proportional to. So this is weight. When weight equals a drag, and this is the equation for the drag. You know what your weight is. When weight equals drag, you're in equilibrium and you're falling without accelerating anymore. That's what terminal velocity is. You don't accelerate anymore. If you were in a vacuum, you would accelerate at 32 feet per second or 9.8 meters per second. It's got the second in there twice. And just for people to understand equations of motion like these right here. So velocity is acceleration times time plus your initial velocity. It's a very simple equation right there. So if you did 32 feet per second, I don't know if I can share my calculator or not. Let me see if I can change my share on here. Let me go back to Zoom screen. My Zoom screen now. Give me a second. Thanks. I gotta stop that share first. Hello. All right, so let's go back to the share clicker. Here we are. So
Greg asked, do missiles fall faster than 120 mile an hour? Well, missiles don't fall. Missiles are propelled.
Yeah, if you're being propelled.
So, yeah, you could rest assured that they're moving a whole lot faster than 120 miles an hour. And again, it's the cross section of the object against the weight of the object. And so if you're talking about a 500-pound dumb bomb, you're going to fall faster than the 200-pound dumb guy.
So let's fall from space. Let's just drop all the way down from 100 miles.
Oh yeah, let's go to the stratosphere. Yeah.
Let's just stratosphere is 100,000 feet. That's Felix level. Let's go on up to orbit. So we're going to drop from we're going to drop from orbit 30. And let's say it's going to take 8 minutes, although it would be much faster, really. If you had no air in the atmosphere. And because rockets, when they launch, they don't just go straight up. They go up and they turn over once they get above most of the air. So a lot of that launch time is flying horizontal. And,
Yes.
and so they typically you fire for about 8 minutes and you're in orbit. So it would be much shorter than 8 minutes. But so we're going to just play with this number because this is a bigger number than the number we'd actually see. So 32 feet per second per second. So how many is that in a minute? Well, just multiply times 60, and that's how many feet it is per minute. Multiply times 60. Let's see, we hit the wrong number. 60. That's how many feet in an hour. Okay, that's a lot of feet. Well, so let's divide that by a mile, 52,800 feet per mile. Okay, 21.9 miles per hour. Let's see, but let's drop it for 8 minutes. So we're going to go back times 8 equals times 60 seconds. So the seconds is what really counts. Since you're going 32 feet per second per second. Now you tell me if I did my math wrong, Lee. But because I don't have the dimensional analysis written down on a piece of paper. I'm just flying off the cuff of my pants here. But it looks like to me the maximum you're going to go dropping from orbit, and you're going to be a pretty high orbit to do this, would be something on the order of 10,500 miles per hour.
But that's with no atmosphere.
No atmosphere, exactly. But
Right.
but I'm trying to get the maximum free fall.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. The maximum free fall onto like Mars or something with no atmosphere or something.
From Earth. Now, if you were coming from the moon, go to the moon, the velocity to get is 25,000 miles an hour. So you might go 25,000 miles per hour if you're being fired from the moon coming this way. If you got the lunar velocity aimed back down toward Earth somehow. But you might could do with a mass driver on the moon to attack Earth. That's something you wouldn't want to see. Something the size of a telephone pole could explode at like 5 tons of TNT. Already calculated that. So,
and I've got a question in my chat. Did Felix, when he jumped out at 100,000 feet, did he go faster than the sound barrier?
He did initially. He did.
Yeah. So but that's still only what, 600 and something. Well, I don't know what it is at that altitude.
Yeah. He broke the sound barrier initially. Am I still on share screen? I just knocked it out.
Yeah. You're here now. I got you.
I think I knocked it out here.
And then what is the guy's name that was making the claim of the 120,000 miles an hour and all the other things? What's this guy's name?
Hang on,
Somebody's asking in my chat.
I just knocked it out of share screen.
Yeah.
Hang on, I found myself over here on the FLIR part.
Oh, there's Teledyne. Now they make a damn good FLIR.
There it is. There he is.
Yeah, that guy. What's his name?
David Serinda.
Yeah, David Serinda.
He's a scientist. An inventor.
Of what?
He's an inventor.
Well, what's he got patents on?
I don't know. Can you see him? Okay, so
yeah, we can see him.
There we go. So he's a scientist and an inventor. But anyway, so yeah, just going back here to the terminal velocity. What I just showed you with the calculator is that you're not going to get if there were no air. The problem is there is air, and the air is what creates the drag force. So he said that the terminal velocity, he don't know the definition of terminal velocity. Terminal velocity is when drag equals weight, basically, because weight is really an acceleration term. It's not mass. Weight is not mass. Weight is force, and it includes acceleration and gravity. A lot of people don't realize that. But for us on Earth, they're basically interchangeable in our day-to-day life. But weight typically actually is a force, and it's the force that pushes you down to the ground. And we equivalent that with mass, but it's really in physics a different thing. And now this is from the Glenn Research Center. So this is a NASA chart. And it goes through all these calculations and so forth, and we get to the drag coefficients and different things in here. So once you introduce air, you're going even slower. And the terminal velocities are typically, like I said, for a diver, they're typically like, skydiver, like, if you're going feet first, a couple 100 miles an hour. Now, maybe you're real high up, you might get 300 miles an hour. You're up with Felix Baumgartner jumping where you got no atmosphere. Yeah, you'll break the sound barrier. But it's kind of an interesting thing here. But there is no way you're going anywhere close to 120,000 miles an hour. So I just thought that was interesting. So yeah. And the other point in here where he was
Kevin Tilmer says, how much thrust would it take to reach 120,000 miles an hour? I don't know if we can do that because we can't go much over Mach, 20, 25, or 30 with the new hypersonic missiles.
Yeah, you're not getting much over that with rockets we got. Well, if you fired long enough, you could. It's
Well,
it's velocity is simply acceleration times time plus initial velocity. So if you could continue to accelerate, problem with chemical rockets, you're gonna run out of fuel pretty fast. So even though they accelerate more as the fuel goes down with the same force supply with less mass, your acceleration increases. So the rocket equation gets a little hairy in some of those things because you got all those rate changes in there. So he did another claim in here, the one that got us was about 4058. Now this could have just been a miscommunication here because I don't think Rex, in fairness to him, remembered exactly what I said. I was basically talking about when I was talking about the FLIR, I was actually talking about the rotation of the gimbal video, rotations in it, and I was saying that basically what I was saying, Lee, was that was an artifact, could have been an artifact. I didn't say it was. I said it could have been an artifact of the derotation mechanism in a FLIR because a FLIR has to lock onto a target, and to do that, it's got to be able to gimbal in all kind of different directions. And let's gimbling and twisting and turning. For you to have a stable picture that you can track in your display, you've got to have an anti-rotation mechanism to take all that out. And so what happens every time that thing twisted, there's just a little jitter in the cloud. So it's possible that that's what that came from. I'm assuming that you're a FLIR guy, that you know what that is.
Yeah, right. And
So it's a real
the point I was trying to make is I was backing up what you were saying, and this guy just flat out said, "Oh, you're wrong." And then the other issue I had was where he said, well, he had developed all kinds of FLIR footage.
He said,
well,
he knew all about cameras and film, but there's no film and FLIRs. Well, I don't know.
No, there is no film in FLIR.
That's right. It's all CCD.
It is.
We'll talk about CCDs later, but I don't know.
Well, and we can talk about that. I mean, and what I was talking about is in the one video where the craft comes down next to the top of the ocean and it starts to flicker and disappears. Okay. And in that scene, I actually think there's a problem with the chopper in the FLIR.
There could be
looking infrared.
There could be. So
because I've seen that artifact on the screen before, of where the power specifically on the old Texas Instruments, the I think they were called the TS-100s, which was the original pan tilt thermal imager that Texas Instruments made for the top of federal and government vehicles. And I was one of the original testers of that. And anytime that TS-100 would have low voltage, you would see that start happening in the screen because it's not keeping up with the speed. There's a rate of which that has to spin to be, how should we say, full motion.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just like a movie projector. If you start slowing down the rate of that movie projector, which I think is normally 24 frames or something a second in a movie. And so if you start pulling back the rate of those frames going by, when you get down to about 16, you'll start to see it's jerky. And at 14, you'll see frame by frame. And the thermal imagers, when that chopper slows down, you start seeing that blinking in the screen like that. And that's what I was saying we were seeing.
Yeah,
He dismissed both of us.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, right so here, Rex just made some big broad statement, like maybe it's a clear artifact. The fact the way he made it sound like it was the fact that we even saw anything at all might have been an artifact of FLIR. That's not what I was really talking about. I was talking about the rotation of it in this case. But my whole overall point I wasn't trying to say these things weren't real. I was just saying, why, after all this time and effort, with all these years, did the Air Force come forward with a B game, what is not their best video that's been allegedly debunked by quite a few other people that, and some of them are armchair kind of people. Why, if they're going to try to take the giggle factor out of a UAP, do they bring us videos that still have giggle factor in them? That was my point. Why are they bringing us these videos? And no actual visual, it's all infrared, no actual visual confirmation of it. So here, let me get this comment. So Rex didn't really hone in on what my comment was. So I can maybe see the guy saying that's not true in this case, because this was a very generic comment that Rex made, because he didn't remember my exact point probably, and I won't fault him for that. But here it is.
UAP, UFO phenomenon. He said that it could possibly be a glitch with the FLIR technology.
So that's a very open statement there. That's not talking. He didn't mention anti-rotation, and it makes it sound like the whole thing was
right.
Just
but what he said was it could be a glitch with the technology. And when he made that statement, I thought that you had told him that there may be a glitch in the technology, because I had told Rex about that chopper.
Yeah.
And I thought that maybe you had mentioned the same thing to him.
I was talking about the anti-rotation stuff.
Right. But I was talking about, but either way,
very specific. And he threw out this real generic thing. But this
right.
guy,
But either way, you've got a possible glitch with the gimbal. I've got a possible glitch with the chopper and the detector.
Oh yeah.
So either way, now we have two people who are authorities have said there's a possibility of a glitch, and he didn't even want to investigate it, didn't even want to discuss it, just flat out said, we're both wrong. And considering,
no, I know.
Yeah, here he is. Maybe back into Rex a little bit more here. Let's see what Rex is saying.
Contractor at NASA. He's a rocket scientist.
Talking about me.
And he was bringing up some information about some of that footage that had been released for the UFO phenomenon. He said that it could possibly be a glitch with the FLIR technology. Like it's not even.
There's no way. No, I know the FLIR technology very well.
There you go. There is no way. I know
Right.
FLIR technology very well. Okay, so you don't even know what we were talking about specifically.
right.
And he just dismisses the whole thing. Right.
And people claim I know everything.
Yeah. So he don't even know what our specific complaints were, but he don't say, he don't give, like I usually use disclaimers. I say, well, according to this, according to that, and providing this, providing that. But he just pops up and says, there's no way. Well, you don't even know what he's talking about. There's no way to. So how can he make such a blanket statement? It's just this blanket statement that I was having issue with here. So, but then he knows FLIR technology very well. So here's your FLIR expert.
Well, one thing, I'm an expert in is cameras, because.
See, I'm an expert in cameras. Well, cameras and FLIR is a very specialized subset of the camera world.
And technically, a FLIR is not a camera.
Yeah,
FLIR is a thermal detector.
That
detects a thermal contrast difference.
Right.
That's
exactly.
not like a camera where a camera uses a CCD.
Why don't we have any nice visual spectrum video of these things? Why is it all FLIR? Anyway, here we go.
I was an expert photographer. I won awards in photography. I developed hundreds of rolls of film. And
what's that got to do with it? I don't know. That's
right, because there's never been a piece of film in a thermal imager or a FLIR in the history of the world. So I don't care if he's developed a million rolls of film that has nothing to do with thermal imagers.
That's my point.
That's the difference between a thermal imager and a camera is much difference between a skydiver and a scuba diver.
True shape revealed.
So. In this one, he talked a little bit about, 306 magnetic lensing. I don't know, he hears a lot of terms, so he's good with throwing jargon out, regurgitating jargon, but he doesn't seem to have a command for what these things are.
It doesn't add up.
What happened? I got an ad running here or something? Yeah, I got an ad running. Why is it not playing now? All right, yeah. Computer's hung up. Hang on, I got an ad here.
And the way it moved, I'm telling you,
The wind.
when it finally magnetically lenses, it takes off like a bullet in the footage.
When it magnetically lenses. So he claims this thing is focusing magnetic fields and using focused magnetic fields to get propulsion. That's pretty damn ridiculous in itself, because Earth's magnetic field is so weak that if you throw a big field into it, it's not going to give you propulsion. Yeah, I know people that think that, but if you really try to do it, you're not getting anywhere. Just see if you can fly a magnet. Get a big electrical magnet hanging off a crane and really crank it up and see if you're flying. But anyway, and magnetic lens exists, but it's not what he says it is. Well, we'll maybe go into that a little bit.
Gimbal does, and I said that's not anti-gravity. These guys are doing something with what I call magnetic lensing propulsion. In the same way you can take a lens in sunlight and you can focus it and start a fire, you can magnetically lens with a concave magnetic lens, magnetic fields.
Magnetically lens magnetic fields. That's not what magnetic lenses do. Magnetic lenses focus charged particles. Let's see.
Exactly.
And you can use them to move charged particles. Now that has its merit, and there are charged particles in the air. And if you use something like an asymmetric capacitor, you can get what's called a Biffle-Brown effect, which some people think is anti-gravity. It's really ion wind. Ion wind. And the ion wind, which a lot of people used to build lifters, and I've built lifters. I've got lifters we played with getting that ion wind. You can feel that wind blowing off of them too. And yeah, they look like they'll jump up and they'll look like anti-gravity flying devices, but they're really accelerating the charged particles in the air. You know, there are air cleaners that use that same technology to filter air, and they're used on submarines and various air movers, just electrostatic force, just a high voltage, and it will do that. But magnetic lenses is a device focusing or deflecting moving charged particles, such as electrons or ions, by use of the Lorentz force. It can be, you can use electromagnets. So it's no big deal. You're not actually focusing the magnetic field, as he said. So, I hate it, but I'm finding a lot of holes in this guy's stuff. I didn't even watch the rest of that presentation. I don't have time to. I'm really busy right now. Seems like I've, let me stop the share here. Oh, we'll do a couple other things while I'm in here. And then I got to figure out where my chat room, and I think I actually closed it accidentally. When I was going through, I think I accidentally closed my chat room, guys. So maybe I'll pull it back up in a little bit and let Lee talk and catch up with you guys.
Oh, no. You're good, man. I'm following right along with you here.
I've actually closed mine out completely. But look at this. Here's what FLIRs do. They look at temperature. They look at hot. You can read hot objects, heat. You register heat with a FLIR. That's what you're looking at. And Teledyne FLIR is a great company. You can go in and order. Well, yeah, he did say, that the military were able to have slices of the spectrum that NASA, the civilian couldn't purchase. You can go in and buy this stuff.
Yeah, that's not true. And that's another thing you brought up. That's a very good point. He said that the military has different frequencies of FLIRs that the rest of us can't get, and that's not true. FLIRs normally come in 3 to 5 or 8 to 12 microns.
Yeah, well, this is how you specify them: by range,
right?
By field of view, if you want to order it, by infrared resolution, which is what he should be talking about.
Right.
How well it resolves the infrared. Like different gradations of temperature.
Right. And that for military spec, that needs to be a minimum of 1/10 of 1 degree thermal contrast difference at Celsius.
There you go. Thermal sensitivity and focus, spectral range. guys, that's it. That's how you specify a FLIR when you buy one.
Right. And
Here's-
so I don't know if you could, I don't know if it showed there. And that's basically what's on the bottom of the P8 that flew out there the other day. Did you see that?
Mhm.
The FLIR that was under the nose of the P8?
Right. You were showing looking back at the Chinese air.
Yeah.
You were showing
It's
looking
a
back-
Russian, the Russian airplane.
That's right.
Yeah, but slide down on that a little bit. I wanted to see if it showed the 3 to 5 or 8 to 12 microns as far as the frequency range. And see, that's a 640 by 512. That's high dollar. You know,
Hey, if you want more information on the product, just call these guys. There's the phone number, people.
right. And they will sell you if you've got the money and you've got the ITAR, which is something we're going to be going to here in a minute.
Well, now, you know what? You ain't worried about ITAR with this one, because look at this. This
Oh, it's ITAR free. Then it's got to be under 14 frames per second.
built in Europe with no U.S. source components. The Ultra Force 350.
Oh, it's ITAR free.
ITAR free.
Wow.
Exportability and
So then they
freedom
can
of-
sell it to anybody and it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So we need to talk about
Wow.
ITAR before we're all done here, guys, because I really, ITAR is a special sore point to me. So let me go back here and stop the share, and I'm going to try to recover my chat room. So Lee, what do you think about all that? I'm going to let you talk a little bit. I've been doing all the talking and walking and showing stuff. So what do you got there, bud?
Well, I thought it was insane. And you know, some of the comments he made. And look, I don't care who goes on to what show. And I don't care what they say on the show, but when they go on to a show and they profess that they are a world authority or an expert or an inventor, and then they express themselves as if they haven't got a clue what they're talking about, and they
Yeah,
profess information that is inaccurate, and people believe that, then that's when I got a problem. You know, you can make all the claims that you want, but when we have scientific evidence or there's no study to support it, there's no supporting evidence, and people profess that as fact, I've got a problem. Because I'm all about, I mean, when I first started working for the Dismounted Battlespace Battle Lab at Fort Benning, Georgia, and my colonel came out to me and said, Lee, you can never be wrong. And I said, excuse me? He said, you can't be wrong. He said, because if you're wrong, people die. The decisions that you make here, men's lives depend upon out on the battlefield. And if you don't get it right here, they're not going to get it out there. And that's going to cause lives. And he said, anytime that you.
Same way with designing a rocket. New math don't work.
Oh, yeah.
All this, you better be exactly right. You got no room for error. Not the slightest
Right.
bitty bit. When you're sitting down doing your calculations for how to design any system in a rocket, it's got to be spot on, exact right. There's, you know, you've got, or people die. You're killing the astronaut. Right. You don't get to orbit, or it's tough. Rockets are tough business. That's why it took some 17 years to go from winning the X Prize to somebody being able to fly a regular mission with it today with the Spaceship Two that finally launched Richard Branson. And it kind of tickles me that he beat Jeff Bezos, because I had a hand in that rocket technology. And in fact, the motor, which is the daddy of the Spaceship One motor, is right here. This is the daddy, the daddy of the Spaceship One motor. It's the Hart Cat's Prize rocket motor. And, you know, my team guys were all involved in that with the Spaceship One, and the Spaceship Two motor, you know, was like the child of that motor. So this is the granddaddy of what they flew today, basically. And I just did a video on my Galactic Greg's channel. I may put this video probably should have been on Galactic Greg's instead of Green Greg's. I may post it over there too. But this is a you know, they lost 4 people in developing that system, and one of them used to work for me, Lynn May, and that was a tragedy. But you know, you just can't afford to be wrong. And frankly, you know, Burt Rutan thought he was the safest guy on the block. In fact, he was making fun of NASA, calling them naysaying. He's talking about how much safer he was going to be. And before they even flew an operational flight, they lost 4 people. And so I hope that don't ever happen again. I hope that they fly safe. I know they spent a lot of time and effort to try to get the safety right, but it took them 17 years. So they did do the due diligence. I know they hated how long it took to do it. It's a return on investment. You want to get a return on investment within 3 years to pay your investors back. See, my buddy Tim Pickens and I, with our heart, come up with a space tourism vehicle we call the Liberator, and we needed to be able to do a return on investment within 3 years to do it. And then I figured I was going to have to fly 200 flights and carrying 3 crew and rocket reliability being 98%. I come to the conclusion I was going to have to kill 12 people to make it work. And that's why I got all cold and clammy on the whole thing. It's like, I don't need to go here. This is nuts. So I kind of backed away from it. Just looking at what the math was telling me in the business plan. Now, it might have been we could have done better than that, but not within a short period of time. We're flying something in 3 years. But that at the time was the top reliability of any rocket. And our system was simpler than your typical rockets or the suborbital. Yeah, maybe we could have had a lot better reliability number than that. But rockets are tough. It's a real tough business. So I like to check out my, I hope I got all my messages here. Looks like I got a super chat. I got a super chat of $20 from Keith Evans. Thank you, Keith, very much. I wouldn't mind checking out some of my comments here in a little bit. Different people saying different things. Let me kind of scan through here. I'll come back at the end and do a lot more hellos to everybody and do a better response to some of the comments. Somebody made a comment here talking about.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, drag coefficient changes. That's true. The coefficient drag is variable and can change according to a lot of different. A CCD chip says Pyramid 7. That's right. That's what you're reading on. So Pyramid 7 is kind of on top of some of this stuff. So but
and CCD is charge couple device.
Right. Charge couple device. So a lot of people are we got some good comments there. We got a lot of good people in here. So I'm not trying to throw rocks at anybody specifically. It's just this guy, he kind of attacked us a little bit, and his credentials are, his science is a little weak. The credentials he advertised these. How can you be a scientist and claim that things go from low pressure outside toward your high pressure inside your hull when it is venting, when it's depressurizing? That's a complete lack of understanding of physics to make a statement like that. That's just kind of blows my mind that he said that. And terminal velocity being 120,000 miles per hour blew my mind too. I never heard of anything like that. That was so off the wall. I nearly fell out of my chair when I heard him say it. It's like, what? That blew me away. Now Rex, I will give him credit this. Even when somebody's on this channel that's totally blowing smoke and he knows it, he will go along with them, just keep them embarrassing them. I've seen him do that.
Yeah.
Later he's complained about it. So I'll give him credit for that. But
look, it's his show. He can do whatever he wants. He can have on anybody he wants, so on and so forth.
Sure, absolutely.
And he can, that's whatever he wants to do. But when I have people come back to me and say, this guy's a genius, he knows all this other stuff,
That kills me.
And then I go and watch the video and I'm like, no, that's not a genius. And somebody said in my chat, you're knocking out 10% of the things. What do you think the credibility of the rest of what he said? I have no credibility in anything he said. If you don't understand basic physics, if you can't understand the basic physics and you can't do the basic math, and you come into my office, I mean, it's like Colonel Canada told me in 1997. Colonel Canada said, Lee, your job is to determine what dogs hunt. I was like, okay. So when we would do the research to do an ACTD, which was an advanced concept technology demonstration, all of those pieces of technology that were tested and evaluated were tested and evaluated by me before they went into the exercise. And if I didn't pass them to be moved into the exercise, they didn't get into the exercise. And so every day, 2-3 people would come into my office and try to sell me on a technology that the US Army should buy. And with $700 million a year for our laboratory to spend, as the senior technologist, it was my job to sit there and listen to their story to determine if what they were telling me was bullshit or not, and to determine whether or not there would be an advantage to soldiers on the battlefield. Because my job description was to identify, locate, procure, test, and evaluate any technology that would enhance the warfighting capabilities of the U.S. Armed Forces. Didn't matter what it costs, didn't matter where it was. If I thought that I could kill an enemy faster, better, more effectively, and cost less, it didn't matter what it cost me to go get that. I would go get that, bring it back to my lab and test it. I mean, we even went to Israel when the Merkava tank first came out. We sent guys to Israel to ride around in the Merkava to see if there was anything we could learn from that tank. And I'll never forget, Stan Ellis came back and said, that thing's badass. So that was I like it from Stan Ellis.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
you know, our goal is to just, tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. If somebody misspeaks, that's one thing. And I'll never say a word about anybody misspeaking, because I've had a stroke and I misspeak from time to time. I don't mean to. That's why I always listen to my own videos.
Well, I do that sometimes.
And I go back. Right.
I get this
Right. And I'll never say
on our little video.
Right. And I'll never say a word to anybody about misspeaking.
Oh yeah. Hey, I know darn well we had LOX kerosene engines for our Liberator rocket. For some reason, I got my head hung up on hydrogen. I just couldn't get the right words out until Tim helped me a little bit get my head screwed back on. In the video I did, we were talking about some of our projects we did in the past. But that happens sometimes because you work on so many different projects, and sometimes you just get your wires crossed. And anybody can do that.
And I will never call out anybody for that.
No.
Because that's not like a 30, 40, or 50% BS factor.
And we all do that.
You know what I'm saying?
That's cool.
Right.
But
and so
somebody represents themselves as being an expert, and they come on and every scientific point they make just about it is just off the charts, and they make claims like terminal velocity being 120,000 miles an hour. It's like, you couldn't get it if you tried. You can't go 120,000 miles an hour dropping from orbit if we didn't have an atmosphere. It's like, you can't even get close to it. You're an order of magnitude off at least. And that
probably wouldn't get to that speed if you came from orbit with a Falcon 9 pushing you towards the Earth with
exactly. If I put the super heavy booster on my butt and aim me straight down, I wouldn't. And evacuate the air in front of me, I still wouldn't get that fast.
Right.
So yeah, it's not 120,000 miles an hour. But the biggest one to me was just that whole thing about the pressure, low pressure from the outside coming on inside of your craft while you're depressurizing. That was like, wow. But hey, what am I talking? I should watch. He's a scientist. I shouldn't be talking that way. But hey, it's fun. But there's a lot of people out there with flat Earth and all these other crazy things. They come out and make these crazy claims, and you can't even hardly talk to them. They're just so indoctrinated in some of these ideas. So we got somebody in here talking about collecting space junk. There we go. That's something we need to do. So did you receive our package? Says James Gross. James, what is that? So all right, there's people making a lot of comments, and I'll have to go back to them a bit.
Doc says he's an expert. Technically, all of us are an expert, or were an expert at one time.
Meaning we were all once a spurt.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're all experts at one time.
I totally know where he's coming from.
Yeah, and
Oh,
the other thing that
we missed something. We missed something. I got a great comment from Stratman, VA. The only way to get 120K Mach speed is get divorced.
yeah.
We told him the whole new world dimension of physics. We totally missed. That's a good one.
Yeah, and Jason Smith says micronova expert.
Yeah. So we're going to evaporate 600 feet of seawater. Yeah, I did a video where I talked about how many little boy bombs it take to do that. I actually calculated it. It's cool when you can calculate, you know, and some of the calculations are just falling off the log easy if you know just a little bit about math. Pyramid 7's on my channel throwing out a lot of good comments. That girl is pretty smart. That lady. All right, so let's see. I'm assuming that's a lady. I may be wrong, but the Pyramid 7 is a very, very smart comment. I got a lot of smart people on my channel here, and Arnold Smith. Quite a few people here, really smart, really good comments. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was this ITAR. Let's go back to this. I'll do a share screen again. I want to go back to this device here and show that again. Talk about
for people that don't know what ITAR, it's International Trade and Arms Restriction or Regulation. What is it, Greg? I can't remember what the last letter is. I think it's Arms Restriction. Let me type it in here.
ITAR free. See, once upon a time, American industry was far ahead of everybody in avionics with guidance, navigation, control systems, with all kinds of sensor technology, with all manner of computers. We were way, way, way ahead of everybody else. And people came to our companies and bought our systems, like they go to Honeywell, mainly for guidance, navigation, control. Honeywell was the top of the shelf in that area. They would come to us by this stuff. We were except for rocket engines, we were heading everything in aerospace and rocketry. Now Russians had edges in certain rocket technology, and in fact we used the RD-180 Russian rocket motor, which is a 2-nozzle engine, which is kind of interesting, in our Atlas V rockets. Now Jeff Bezos got the contract to replace that, and he's way behind schedule. Once again, underperforming. You got the man with the most money in the world can't seem to get a rocket up hardly. He started before Elon Musk, and Elon Musk at least got the Falcon 9 going, so he's a lot further along in that regard. I know you're not the most fond person in the world of Elon Musk. I have met Elon Musk a couple of times.
Yeah, me and Elon have a love-hate relationship.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the lithium-ion battery. I've written quite a few review item discrepancies against that. So here's the thing. What happened to our industry was, so in order to limit the export of technology, we came up with this thing called ITAR so that the bad boys wouldn't get our good technology. But it meant we couldn't hardly sell anything to anybody overseas. No foreign national could get anything. So when they were coming to us and buying it before, they just started developing their own systems. And quite often they developed systems that were superior to what we had to start with, because they couldn't come to us anymore. They had their own requirements for these systems, and they couldn't get them from us, so they just started developing their own. For example, this rocket motor I got right here,
And you're not showing your screen here, Greg.
Hang on. Stop share. There we go.
Everybody's seeing that. And Kevin was nice enough to share ITAR. I always just call it ITAR, but it stands for International Traffic in Arms Regulations.
That's it. I should have pulled it up.
And it has a whole lot to do with more than arms.
Yeah, it does. It does.
It does. In ITAR covers thermal imagers, night vision equipment, data stuff, tracking. ITAR covers a lot of stuff way beyond guns and weapon systems.
It's got the word.
Yeah, it's anything. Yeah, anything that can aid an adversary in fighting on the battlefield, the U.S. government wants to cover under ITAR.
Yeah, well, what they've done,
And so much so when I went to Ukraine, I took a lawyer with me for the ITAR.
Well, I went to Russia and Moscow just to make sure that our T-Lean and our Leonard Google X Prize team did not violate ITAR while we were negotiating to try to get Leonard Pod technology from the Russians. Actually, it was Leonard Globe. We were trying to get their Leonard Globe. We wanted to buy that system to go to the moon. And I had to make sure that we didn't specify anything, because if we actually gave them a spec for what we wanted, we were violating ITAR. And so I mainly went just to make sure our guy didn't violate ITAR, and that was my main role in it. So yeah, I've read the entire thing, and they actually had the State Department get after me once, want me to file an application fee, just file an application. You have to file an application to actually apply to be able to export. So you don't just do an export license, you got to do a pre-app before that. And that pre-app is $500. And they were trying to tell me that I was supposed to file a pre-app for I was doing rockets. And I came back to them and said, no, ma'am, well, we do not have to do that because I'm not actually selling rockets and I'm not sharing the designs therefrom. I'm not selling designs, rockets, in the potential business of offering a launch service. And the buyers are not going to get the rocket or rocket technology in so doing. And so I explained very carefully why I did not violate the ITAR, and I never heard from him again. So, but you know, another guy who once hired me used a coffee table to put his space station module on. That was old Bigelow, and the Department of State declared that coffee table to be ITAR. It literally was a coffee table. And they declared it to be ITAR because he uses a support structure for his space system. Well, these hybrid rockets ain't nothing but really but plumbing. They're very low tech systems. You know, this is a pressure fed rocket system. And it means that the pressure of the oxidizer tank has to be higher than the chamber pressure in the rocket motor. The oxidizer tank ran at PSI of 750. The rocket motor chamber pressure was about 450 psi, and have to come out the exit nozzle. This motor I just showed you produced 1,400 pounds of thrust when we fired it. This is a fired motor. It's been fired. Drop something. Oh, Starship fell over on me. Holy smoke! I heard something fall. So
you're supposed to put that behind your ass and go up to altitude so you can hit that 120,000 miles an hour.
There you go. There we go. So that's the upper stage. You know, they got a super heavy booster that's going to go underneath that thing, and it's going to have like 33 engines on it. They're talking about putting more engines on it. Those Raptors. You know, reliability is inversely proportional to parts count, so that worries me. That worries me a lot. But
and the contract goes to the lowest bidder.
Yeah, that's why Alan Shepard, when he was sitting on top of the Redstone rocket, said, "Fire this candle." He knew what risk he was taking, and he was having problems. He was messing in his britches, and he was getting tired of sitting on the launch pad. They didn't know he was going to be sitting on the launch pad so long. So he said, "Fire this candle." The full recognition he was sitting on a device built by the lowest bidder. So yeah, you know, you got to see some of these old guys were heroes for climbing on these rockets. Rockets are risky. You got to put a lot of energy in your body to go up to orbital velocity. It's like a stick of dynamite for every gram. It's probably worn out. I need to go back and figure the mass equivalent and the energy equivalent, but it's an enormous amount of energy. And you have to take it all back when you come back. So you ride on a controlled explosion going up, and you come down, you come back like a meteorite. There's nothing trivial about that. And everything has to work. You know, it's a rocket is like a long chain. If any link breaks, you're gone. So it's only as good as the weakest link. It's complex devices. So a hybrid rocket motor is a pretty simple system. That's why Burt Rutan chose to go with that for his Spaceship One. That's why you're flying on Spaceship Two. That put Richard Branson in space today. We'll have to see what No, Bezos, Jeff Bezos, he worries me being kind of like Emperor Ming, wanting to take over the universe with Amazon. It's kind of he's probably a big fan of the Great Reset and all those nasty things. But he does believe in the orbital rotational space habitats. I think that's better than going to a planetary surface. Although I am kind of fond of Venus for several reasons. I've come up with habitat design for Venus. I think Venus is far more settable than Mars, actually. Earth gravity, at 50,000 feet, you got temperature and pressure just like Earth. It's got a little acid, so you got to wear a little acid suit and a little oxygen breather so you can get oxygen. You can, be like being on Earth otherwise, almost. Except you got to walk around on a platform of some kind. But the atmosphere of Venus, being has a higher density of carbon dioxide than Earth's atmosphere, so you could hermetically seal a house and it would float at about the right altitude if it had Earth air inside. Isn't that amazing? So yeah, ITAR, but ITAR is, and there's also EAR, export. I have to look that up too. EAR, ITAR. There's a couple of different things you got to watch out there in the treaty world. And when I do documentations at NASA, I have to classify them according to those categories. So it's and what you do with them has a lot to do with that too. Judy Dow said, I had a tree stump to do that once. Mental note, use less black powder. All right, so we got some people. Oh, I'm talking too high level. Somebody says, I can see my eyes glazing over like a glazed donut. Sorry about that, Judy Dow. Greg, you need percolator coffee pot next to him.
I was trying to find where Clinton had given the Chinese the ICBMs.
Yeah, you mentioned that. So tell us
in
about
violation of ITAR. And so when Clinton was in office, he gave the Chinese Minuteman missiles and gave them all the documentations and everything. And as a contractor for DOD at the time, if I had taken one page out of the 747 aircraft full of documents that Clinton sent to China, if I had got on board that aircraft and pulled one paragraph off of one page and took a photograph of that and sent it to China, that one paragraph would have probably put me in prison for 20 years. But instead, Clinton doesn't give them one paragraph off of one page. He gave them 8 missiles and a Boeing 747 full of documentation supporting those missiles. And if I had done, like I said, if I had given up one paragraph, I would have went to prison for 20 years. He gave them 8 full-blown functioning missiles, as well as all the supporting paperwork with it. And then years later, I was on Coast to Coast with Art Bell or whatever, it was the Coast to Coast show. And I was on there for about 15 minutes and we were talking about ITAR. And the reason we were talking about ITAR was because Obama had now dropped the ITAR for thermal weapon sites. And I had said that was a huge mistake because the resolution and thermal contrast difference of what the U.S. had compared to what other countries had was the difference between basically watching an HD TV, watching a black and white. The Russians do not have thermal imagery that is capable of doing what we do. In fact, they still don't have thermal imagers capable of detecting what we can detect. The technology that we had with thermal imagers in the late 60s, mid 70s is about what they've got on their drones today as far as the resolution. They're not even above hardly 520 lines of resolution, 480 stuff. Not even 760. And when you look at the videos that come out of the Russian military, couple things you should pay attention to. First off, most of their weapon systems don't have gyro stabilized barrels. Watch the vehicle as it's going down the road. If the end of that barrel bounces up and down with the movement of that vehicle, it's not gyro stabilized. Because if it was gyro stabilized, that thing would just sit there and point in the exact same direction and azimuth and elevation constantly.
That's what
They
an
don't
M1
have
tank
it.
barrel will do. It will point to the exact spot. It won't move.
Right. Does not move. And so the tank can spin around and go over bumps or do whatever it wants. And it is not, the end of that barrel is not going to stop pointing at whatever the target is. If you put a flashlight inside the tank shining out through the barrel, that flashlight will shine directly onto what that tank's going to shoot at. And it doesn't matter what that tank does, that flashlight is not going to stop shining on the
No,
target.
those
And
are.
the Russians don't have that.
I worked on the M1 tank a couple times in my life, and I've also worked on the F-15. I did test program sets. Basically, we designed the testers and the hardware and the software to be able to test and isolate failures in the line replacement units, the electronic boxes of a tank, down to the shot replaceable units, which is normally cards inside, so that the a soldier, and he had to be able to give instructions specific, so just any soldier that had a little training would know what to do with them. So that was an interesting exercise. But the M1 tank, you know, man, really impressed me. And one of the things I did work on, of course, was also the thermal imaging system for the M1 tank. I found bugs in some of the fielded software we'd put out and had to correct that. So I worked on the position navigation unit that we had, which was the original one for the M1 tank. Well, the one at least I was working on under the M1A1 program was built by Smith Industries over in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So, you know, I did get a couple of trips up to Detroit and Grand Rapids under that contract. But yeah, so I've also, you know, I've worked F-15, and so I've been quite familiar with F-15 avionics. You know, I've worked quite a few rockets. I've worked space station robotics. A lot of the design in the International Space Station, how everything's pinned out in nodes 2 and 3, I set that up. The basic architectural layout of the utility rails that house the remote power RPCMs, remote power controller modules, and node 2, Jess Rayleigh and I sat down, and he was a guy who used to work at Huntington Beach, McDonald. I used to be McDonald Douglas. We sat down and figured that out basically on a napkin for starters, because we had some space constraints on there. So we figured out how to do that. But you know, I've had some fun in my days. You know, not only 1 in 20 engineers ever work as a design engineer in their life as an engineer, because there's so much other things in there, requirements and other things that engineers do. And I'm over doing safety stuff these days, and I have done a lot of systems engineering. So I haven't worked as a design engineer for most of my career. Unlike you, you've been a design engineer most of your career, I'll take it, Lee. So you're a little more steeped in technology than some of those sensor programs. And I've been kind of across the board. I've been all over the place in all kinds of different things. So I've got a broad range, but you've got a lot more in-depth knowledge in sensors, and I appreciate that.
Well, that's what I do. My forte
Break it up.
is I was the LTI. I was the lead technical integrator.
You know, I think there are
So
I think
when trying to do business.
yeah, you were breaking up.
Yeah. Okay. So I was the lead. So I was the senior technologist for the Dismounted Battle Space Battle Lab. So anything that the Dismounted Battle Space Battle Lab bought, tested, evaluated, or whatever came under my purview. And that was any electronic device that was put onto a soldier when they touched the battlefield. So as soon as he stepped out of the helicopter, everything that was on that man was under my lab, or woman. As soon as they stepped out of a tank, as soon as they parachuted in and hit the battlefield, as soon as boots were on the ground, everything that soldier picked up, carried, talked on, looked through, or fired was approved by my laboratory.
Mm.
So that's what I did. So the reason I'm so far ahead in the sensors and all of that is because that's what my laboratory did. So the EMIDs that go out on the battlefield, the sensors, the thermal imagers. I mean, I tested and evaluated the very first thermal weapon sight that ever went onto an M16 for the U.S. military. Numero uno that came from Texas Instruments. I signed off on the acquisition of that for the prototypes. I was part of the LTI that tested those thermal weapon sights out on the battlefield. So I wrote the requirement, and then I wrote the testing protocol, and then I conducted the test, and then I wrote the final report for the recommendations so it could become a line item in the U.S. military's budget. And we were serious about it. That's why we spent $700 million a year to do it. Officially, we spent $400 million out of my laboratory, but we had a variety of other laboratories that had a kind of a, how should we say, a bigger budget than they should have. And we would nipper funds out of that for anything that we needed. So, and we did that. And one guy, I remember this one guy from Natick, we were taking, I think we were taking like $20 million or something from his budget to do an exercise. And he's like, well, y'all were taking $20 million from my budget. And we're like, sir, you do realize that your budget was created so we could take it. Okay. You know, we didn't give you $100 million to check MREs. Okay. Which is what you know.
I hated MREs.
You know,
I prefer the old C-rats myself.
Yeah, well, yeah. Oh, I like C-rats too. And the oldest C-rats I ever made or ever ate were from July of 1943. That's my record. And I'm here to tell you that peanut butter from 1943, when you eat it in the late 80s, does have oil on it. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but you got to stir it up a little bit. But the crackers were still good. The jelly was still good. You stir up the peanut butter, it was fine. We called MREs 3 lies in a bag. The MRE stands for meals ready to eat, and we say it's not a meal, it's not ready, and you sure as hell don't want to eat it. But and my favorite was the pork barbecue and rice. So when I would of the olders was I would
you remember the John Wayne bar and the MRE,
trade whatever for those.
Remember the John Wayne bar and the C-rat?
Yeah.
Always make the crackers. It's always packed with crackers, and the crackers always like chocolate. Guys, they were packed together.
Right.
Yeah. Good days. Rainbow Foods rock.
So let's see.
Peanut butter that old, yeah. But hey, you know that's the thing. Canned food can last a long time, a lot longer than what a lot of people realize. And so C-rats literally were used for decades, and they were still edible if stored properly. I did a video, you know, about canned goods, how long that that expect them to last. There's canned goods 100 years old that are still edible. So, all right, well, we've been all over the place here. So we talked about ITAR. We talked about the missiles. There was also some computers that Bill Clinton let go to China. You know, people talk about China's military budget not being as big as ours. It doesn't have to be. They got all these people over here swiping our technology, so they don't have to develop our technology. They don't develop hardly any technology, as far as I can see. Everything they develop is copycat, and so they don't have to pay all the technology development. And their production labor is so much cheaper than ours. They get a whole lot more per dollar than we do. So their defense budget may seem to be a lot smaller, but it buys so much more there. That's apples and oranges. It's not even a good comparison. Look at what they're developing instead of and how many ships they're building, the rate they're building them at, and missile systems, and compare that to what we're doing. They have production capacity, and we don't have a lot of reserve ammunition. We will be good in a short war, but once if it has any lasting time to it, we're in trouble. What do you think about that, Lee?
Oh yeah.
Okay, Al Gore, I
think we're going to have a lot of problems.
Al Gore says, I've had barbecue C-rats in China. He's talking about SCARATS, not C rations. Barbecue sea rats. Yeah, I bet you have, Al. Al said he was an engineer. He invented the internet, you know. So
yeah, and he's still upset at me for going on Good Morning America in June of 2001 and saying that Al Gore never invented anything. So he wasn't real thrilled with me, but that's okay. He'll get over it.
Al Gore says it's China.
Yeah, and I've got a guy named yeah, and I've got a guy in my chat here whose name is Zach, and he doubts that I'm right about the Russians' thermal imager being the equivalent of ours. You know, because I said that the thermal imagers that they have on their drones is no better than what we had in the late 70s, early 70s, late 60s. Okay. Well, I can prove that. Go look at the video footage of the thermal imagers that are in the middle of the aircraft carrier decks from Vietnam, and look at the resolution of the fighters, the F-4s and the A-5s, and the aircraft that were landing on the thermal imagers. Look at the resolution and the contrast to that. Look at the thermal imager footage from the Forstall fire. And then go, and that's 60s and 70s. Okay. I mean, the Forstall, the thermal imager that was on the Forstall, what was that? Put in there in 68, 65? Okay. So look at the resolution of that. Look at the contrast of that. And then go today and look at any military footage you want coming out of the Russians, because I watch it for hours every day. Look at the footage that they've got coming from their drones. And the footage coming from their drones is no better than the footage we had in the 60s and 70s. And I'll bet my life on that, Zach. And I would also expect Zach to go and actually watch the video that shows a little bit of my history. And then maybe you'll understand why I can make that assessment. And 99% of the people in the world who are authorities on it would agree with my assessment. So, and this is what I get on a daily basis here, Greg. People that have no idea what the hell they're talking about coming here. Lee, you don't know what you're talking about. And that's because they don't know who I am. They don't know what I did for 30 years. You know, so.
Well, you can have a pretty good career in the military or any technology field if you stay up on what you're doing and care about it. And we've had some interesting days, Lee, in the last few decades. That's all I can say. It's been interesting. I've had some interesting adventures myself.
Yeah. And a lot of them we can't talk about, but hey, you know, we do what we can and we say what we can. And, you know, we you know, my channel and everything I do is all about telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And I call it like I see it, and I've seen a lot of it, and I can back up what I claim. So
Yeah.
Let's see here.
Well, that's what this video has been about tonight. We've been kind of, somebody kind of smeared us a little bit, and it seemed like maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but the credentials of the smearer were somewhat less than absolutely spectacular.
Well, I don't care if somebody, I don't care if somebody smears me. Okay. They can say whatever they want because I can back up what I say. It's when people come out and are literally talking straight out of their ass and have no idea what they're saying. And then they play themselves off as experts. And then people believe what they say. And then they challenge the experts based on what somebody who doesn't know their ass from a hole in the ground has said. And that's where I have an issue. Like the guy who said that we can have stars that are as small as our moon. Now that's physically impossible.
Hey,
okay, we can't have stars.
Show me, no, you can't. Show me one. Just show me one. Anywhere in the universe. Show me one. Show me one.
Yep.
Just show me one. Anywhere in the universe of all the astronomy. Show me one. Yeah, I think we're gonna be waiting a long time to see that one.
Yeah. Well, Zach, you must not watch me enough, because if you doubt what I'm telling you about thermal weapon sites, then you're not watching me enough, my friend.
There you go.
So,
watch Lee Moore.
Yeah.
Watch Lee Moore.
I mean, here let me see here. See if I can find it here. Because I know I got one here somewhere. So, un momento, por favor, mi amigo. Okay, so let's go to, it's here somewhere.
We'll do some screen sharing.
Somewhere.
All yours.
Okay, so right here. Yeah, no, I was just gonna, yeah, let me do that. And let me, oh, I gotta move this out of the way. But Zach can see that. That's me, 1996. So that's what, 25 years ago? That is the very first thermal weapon sight ever sold to the U.S. Army that mounts onto an M16. In this image, that's an M16A2. You'll notice it has no hand. In 1996, there was one of these in the world.
Hey,
How
Lee,
do I know? I
show-
built
show-
it.
Shortly, I got something on your
Yeah.
bandwidth. Your
Yeah.
bandwidth.
So yeah, hold on. Let me.
You got a low bandwidth. That's what my message.
Oh yeah, my bandwidth sucks, buddy.
Yeah, it's in your bandwidth
It,
low.
it
You're
does.
breaking up some.
Hold on.
Can you do a screen share
So
you're talking about?
share screen.
I'm
Yeah,
not-
yeah. I'm doing it right here, buddy. Is that
There we are.
up here? You got it there? Can
There
you
we
see
are.
it?
That's you?
All right, now let me go bigger. Let me go bigger. Yeah, that's me. This is me at the AUSA, Association of the United States Army. I was their poster child in 1996.
All right.
You know, that's me in 1996. Don't really know how I did that, but okay. Here we go. That's me in 1996. This is the world's first thermal weapon sight ever put onto an M16 with no rail. And there's the cable coming up, and here's the see-through heads-up display. That's a see-through heads-up display. Okay, that's projecting the image from this thermal weapon sight directly back into my eye. Okay, and then let me see if I got another. Well, that's all I got to show you.
That's way back 50 pounds ago, wasn't it? I got
Oh, it's 80 pounds ago, buddy. 80 pounds ago.
Hey, you and me both. You and me both.
Yeah. So, you know, I don't bullshit. I just call it like I see it.
There you
Tell it like I see it, and what I claim, I can back up.
go. Same
You know,
here. Same here.
so people don't want to believe what I got to say, then carry your ass somewhere else. I don't lie to people. I don't bullshit people. You know, if I'm wrong, I'm extremely upset about being wrong.
So, you know, a lot of times, you know, I will tell people that, you know, it seems like, or, you know, it's my understanding. If I don't have something 100%, you know, I'll throw qualifiers in what I'm saying, or it could be this. You know, if there's something I don't know absolutely, I don't speak it in absolute terms. I say, could be this, could be that. But, you know, if I'm going to tell you something is something, take it to the bank.
Oh, yeah.
Take it to the bank. If I'm saying this is what it is, take it to the bank. And even when I'm saying it could be, that's pretty much a take to the bank too, by the way, because, you know, I do a lot of research and have for a long time on a lot of topics. So I try to stay on top of the world, because if we don't, it's going to go on top of us. That's why I tell all my followers, they got to keep their eyes wide open and their head on a swivel. And I help them with that, because I tell them the proposition of my channel is help them survive, thrive, and stay out of the hide. And guys, if you haven't subscribed to Lee Wheelbarger's channels, go over and subscribe to him. And if you're watching this first time and haven't subscribed to my channel, subscribe. So we can get that out of the way. We've done mostly technology talk tonight, so I'll probably also put this over on galactic grades. This is more of a galactic grades topic than a green grades topic.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about ITAR and falling from space, and, you know, terminal velocities, the UAP videos. We hadn't really talked, and we hadn't talked to the topic of UAPs and what they might or might not be, and the validity of all that. I was planning to do a video on galactic grades at some point, just a general discussion of it. But the military sure didn't leave us a whole lot to hang on there in terms of what it might be. but I know what it's not. It's not. You're not looking at hypersonic vehicles. Those are not. They're not using
No.
hypersonics. Hypersonics are, because some of those things are stationary from time to time, and hypersonics needs to go really fast to be operational. So it's not some Russian or Chinese hypersonic technology in play.
And the other point would be, if that vehicle were indeed hypersonic, those F-18s wouldn't have been watching it, because it would have been out of there.
Well, some
I
of
mean,
some of them are alleged to get out of sight real fast, but some of the velocity that they attribute to being various things aren't really necessarily what you're looking at. The goes real fast video where it looks like the object, there's a tic tac moving really fast. If you consider that the camera platforms are really high, and the object being video is about halfway down to the ocean, and if you consider that you're looking at it through a narrow field of view, you're moving really fast. The water underneath that you're seeing is going to look like it's really booking, but somebody supposedly did all the trigonometry on it, figured out that the tic tac was really only in that case moving 20 to 40 knots, which is about wind speed, which means it could have been a party balloon, and there's no indication that what we see and hear from the so-called pilots is a real pilot video. That might not have been something else, because it's kind of odd. They didn't really talk the way pilots normally talk.
well, I have a point to that.
Yeah.
And that is they're not talking to a dispatch or AWACS or anybody like that. This is just fighter pilot to fighter pilot on their tack, of which they are a lot more loose in their verbiage, as opposed to what they were if they were calling in to the tower or to the carrier or AWACS. So that's where I gave them, I because of the verbiage, it did not discredit it to me, because I've heard enough of what those guys say back and forth when they're doing bombing runs or training, that they say all kinds of stuff that you would never want on the radio. Way more
like
outlandish than some of the stuff.
Yeah, I get it, man.
Right.
That's that old expression.
Yeah.
Just amongst us chickens.
Right. Exactly.
Whatever. All right, I can copy that. Well, it's interesting. It just seems to me that they could have used a lot better video than what we got. Some of the shipborne video of the triangles, that could have been the bokeh effect, wherein an unfocused point of light takes the shape of the iris of your camera, especially if it's closed in any. So that's what a bokeh effect is. And they were blinking at the strobe frequency of, say, of your lights you'd have on like a commercial aircraft like a 747. So that was kind of interesting. It could have been that we were getting invaded by Delta Airlines in that case. They were deltas, triangles. So I don't, there's a lot of stuff that's not answered. There's a lot of big questions in this field of UAPs. So I'm not trying to discredit the field or say there isn't those things out there. My point was, why is that the only videos they got? They didn't put their best foot forward. It's like they came in with their hind foot instead. They didn't show us the A game. They brought us the B game, and the reports were very inconclusive. So what the heck was it? What was it not? For the videos that they brought us, you could shoot them down in terms of what they claim. Now, if you could take at face value the things the pilots were saying, where they said there's fleets on, there's this, there's that. If that's true, then it shares a different light on it. But the videos themselves don't necessarily bear that out just on their own weight. So there's just a lot that's lacking in what we got. But then again, this whole thing was supposed to have been a declassified report, and they did have a classified briefing to Congress. So there's stuff that we still haven't and are not going to see, it appears. So it's all, but there was one senator, who was it? one senator, somebody made a, was it Rubio or was it, who was it? Might have been Rubio. Somebody made a comment that they didn't think that they'd be able to keep it silent because some of it was rather spicy. If they thought that it was going to escape what was briefed in the classified section, that they would get out because it was rather spicy. That's rather strange, interesting language to use. Did you hear that comment?
Yeah. And I think there's a whole lot more that they could have shared beyond what they declassified.
Yeah. So there's much that remains.
I have knowledge and I have friends that, so I've got friends that have knowledge, and people's mind.
Golly, you're breaking up real bad. All I heard is you got
Interesting.
knowledge and you have friends that have knowledge. That's all I got, Lee. Well, you know, maybe we should just quit waiting around on reports. Let's just build our own, Lee. I think I lost you. I hadn't lost the link, but I'm not hearing anything from you. All right, the video, the picture's gone. I'm sure. All right, there you are, Lee. I see your face now.
Yeah. Well, let's see if I lost my stream. No, I'm still here on my stream, supposedly. Kinds of things I don't care. Stupid people I ban, and I ban him and somebody else let him back in. But anyway, the point I had was trying to make here, and let me get your screen here back bigger here, Greg. The point I was trying to make was we know things that the government is not going to tell you. We know things that would freak people out if they knew. And so even with what they were going to put out in this so-called declassified brief, the shit I'm talking about wasn't in there and ain't never going to be in there. And they're not going to tell you what they know.
Well,
They'll show you a little bit.
I think a good problem.
But I don't think they're going to tell you the whole story.
A lot of this stuff we're seeing belongs to us. What do you think? I'm not saying it all.
Yes, some of it does. And so the two incidents with the U.S. Navy, I believe that both of those objects, the Tic Tac and the one that looks like the iron, I think both of those are U.S. military property. And the reason that I say that both of those are U.S. military property is because where were they filmed? They've only been filmed in two places in the world. Where are they? Both of them are in military flight training areas. Both cases. The one in California, as well as the one in Virginia, which is off the coast. Both of those are U.S. Navy, U.S. Air Force flight training areas. One of them is for the VX guys out of Oceana, and the other is for guys out of San Diego. And all of that footage, every second of it, as well as the radar contacts on those craft, all of that occurred inside of restricted U.S. military airspace for flight ops training.
Well, I did a flight of a
I'm going to leave it there.
I did a flight of a balloon launch return vehicle. It was a rocket-powered UAV. And by regulation, I had to do that in restricted military airspace as
Correct.
a UAV. And that's what I did. And I used Eglin Air Force Base for my range scheduling for that. But I also used them in range scheduling for my subsequent cat's prize rocket too, the one that I got the motor for sitting beside me here. So I worked with Eglin Air Force Base. I've worked with the AST office and the FAA. I filed a launch waiver application process. I had to file also with the FCC to use frequencies that we use. So, you know, there's a lot of regulatory stuff you got to jump through when you're doing this kind of business. Everybody thinks rockets are just, you know, you build a rocket. You know, our rocket project was more of an avionics project because we had to be able to verify the altitude. But then we had a lot of logistics involved in it and a lot of just paperwork, just an enormous amount of paperwork. But we managed to pull it all off. And just because I had a really great team working with me. And in fact, I never slept in those days. So, and I'm still afflicted with a lot of that today.
Yep.
Granny Lana says, we have UFOs nightly, crazy night stuff. Wow, Granny. Maybe I need to come there and camp out. She's in Utah. So maybe I need to go have to check it out. Al Gore says he wouldn't mind a UFO. So, and Judy McDowell says, I'd love to fly in one. Oh my gosh, I don't know. You might be captive. I'd rather just hijack one and take it over. What do you think, Lee?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Just take one over for a little while, play with it for a little bit.
Well, hey, Lee, you know, if you think about it, you know, you and I are engineers, so we can figure out how to engineer this and do it. Now think about this. It's said they have a hive mind, and so that means they all have to be in intimate, constant communication, which means that they would have to have one heck of a communication system between all these devices and whatever the motherships are, which means if you disrupt that communication system, the thing will probably crash. So if you disrupt their comms, she's probably coming down. So all you got to do is figure out what the frequency is they're operating on and jamming. It's probably some RF frequency, some high frequency. So if you hit it right, it'll probably come down.
Well, I don't know. It could be autonomous.
You think so?
Well, I started flying autonomous in '97.
Yeah, could be.
I mean, when I launched my drones in '97.
Well, if they're all drones, that's providing they're all drones. But if any of them are occupants, if they're occupied by physical creatures, that might be different. So
right, but I'm saying even with my autonomous drones, even the ones we flew in Ukraine that the Russians hated, the ones that we harassed them with over there, they don't emit anything.
Well, that's true. Those UAV, if it's operating under a program, and you can't jam them. But the ones that used to operate by wire, that used to be RF controlled, you could always jam those. And that's true
even the RQ-170. If you could get bounce off a satellite, you could take it. That's what spoof the GPS. That's how the Iranians were able to get that to crash in the desert. They were able to get above it and spoof it, is what been referred to from some folks I know that should we say are somewhat read in on what's transpired over there. They said they spoofed it, but we learned from that, because now when I send up my systems, I have a couple safeguards that go into that. So you can't lie to me and tell me that I'm at a certain altitude, because I'm going to take barometric pressure data from an altimeter and see if you're lying to me. Because if you try to spoof me with my GPS to keep forcing me down to the ground, and my altimeter says, that if the altimeter says that I'm at 30,000 feet and the GPS says I'm at 50,000 feet and I need to drop, I'm not going to drop if 30,000 feet is the altitude I'm supposed to be flying at. So even if you spoof my GPS, I don't care. And then, because I'm going to be listening to GLONASS at the same time. So I'm going to pull the GLONASS and the GPS at the same time. And then on top of that, I'm going to have an inertial navigation system.
And most people don't know what GLONASS is. You're talking about the Russian GPS.
Yes.
Most people don't know what that is. So I just thought we'd want to.
Yeah. So when we send up a bird, my birds have GPS, GLONASS, the Japanese system, inertial navigation, dual barometric pressure altimeters, and then some type of dead reckoning to at least get you in the general area or get you out of there. So, I mean, because if I have a problem and I'm over top of Iran, I want to go out into the water and ditch. I don't really give a crap where in the water. I just don't want to go down in Iran.
Amen.
Or in Russia.
Good thing
Okay. I don't.
about seawater. There's an
Huh?
advantage to seawater, and it fries all your avionics. It really messes up all the circuits. And
Yeah.
stuff. It's awful.
You know, and I don't want to do the same thing that we did during the Corona project, where we dropped the world's most advanced high altitude camera with the best aerial photographs of Russia in the history of the world, and we dropped the freaking camera right in St. Petersburg.
Oops. Well, aren't you glad we do all that digitally today? Unless you're the guy on the other show who took everything from film.
Rutro, I design drones. I have drones flying over Ukraine. I went to Ukraine to fly my drones.
Right.
So laugh out loud.
Right.
I can't believe the ignorance of some of the people that come in here. They have no idea who you are, no idea who I am. And when we talk about what we do for a living, they think that we're talking shit. So I just ban them. Okay. I can't stand stupid people that come in here and want to make stupid comments. So
somebody asked.
Yeah, my birds.
Somebody asked if we have a moon base.
If we have what?
There's no current moon base or anybody going to the moon with conventional rockets. So if somebody's managed to have a covert program up there, I don't know anything about it. The only covert program I know about was the one in the movie Iron Skies. A Nazi base on the moon, right? just kidding, guys. I'm just kidding. It was a movie. It was a show, but who knows? Maybe they're up there. Maybe that's what we're seeing. Those little Nazi UFOs that were in. Some people allege were invented. Foo Fighters. Just kidding, guys. You have a little fun in here. Iron Skies. That's kind of a spoof movie. You ever see it? I never even watched the movie. You ever see the trailers to it or watch that movie?
I haven't watched a movie probably in 25 years.
It's probably a 20-year-old.
I haven't watched television in 15 years.
Yeah, I haven't watched TV.
You know, I get because, you know, I got too much to do. And the news isn't accurate, so why watch it? That's why we have our own news channel.
Bingo.
Is to provide real news to the people.
It's propaganda. It's all propaganda. So what's the purpose? So, all right. Well, I don't know. I think we've kind of picked on this stuff enough here. You got anything else you want to bring up?
No, just I think we've pretty much covered most everything. I want to do more of this and talk about the events of the world, talk about China. So I'd like to try to schedule with you to have you on, because I do a weekly news broadcast every night, Monday through Friday.
On what days?
And so I'd like to have you whenever, Monday through Friday, 9 Eastern, 8 Central, 7 Mountain, 6 Pacific, Monday through Friday.
Okay.
And so any night at 8 o'clock that you ain't busy and there's stuff going on in the world, let me know. And
well, things are really cooking between us and China and with Iran.
Oh yeah.
Russia. I think we're in one of the most dangerous times we've ever seen. We got several. Once upon a time, you had 2 primary nuclear states, and so it was kind of a dipole world. Now we've got many poles involved. If you look at it that way, there's so many nations that could cause trouble. So and the tensions are really going up high.
I do want to talk. I do want to talk about something here. I got somebody named Guess Again who is bringing up dues with Dutch cents.
Oh God.
So obviously this is somebody that doesn't know the truth about Dutch sense, nor do they know anything about dews. So would you like to explain why you can't start a fire on ground from space with a dew, or do you want me to?
Well, I'll start at it and you can chime in. The biggest power pack
Okay.
we have on our satellites is these big solar arrays are typically like 25 kilowatt solar arrays. And that's on a really large satellite. So if you were using that to power your system, I mean, you could bank it up in capacitor a little bit, then you got to discharge it. But then you got to dissipate the heat in the satellite too. You can't just fire a satellite continuously like that. It'll overheat and burn up because it's hard to reject heat in space for one. So you got a big heat management proposition error you got to deal with. And then he shows pictures what looks like a satellite firing from across the atmosphere. Like this is Earth's curvature. He shows them firing like this down into places, and he thinks that's a fire. One interesting thing is the color of the beam is always matching the color of the fire. So I would say this is a lens effect. What you're seeing is you're seeing
Yes.
some kind of lens effect of the sensor that photographed it, because I've always noticed the color of the beam matches the color of the fire. But here's another thing. When you're firing through the atmosphere at the ground, the atmosphere is extremely thick, especially if you're shooting through it sideways. You're going to have that beam spreading out. It's going to flare out going through the atmosphere, especially when going sideways, and you're not going to get any effective power on the ground at all. So you're not going to get the kind of, see, most of you got 25 kilowatts to start with, and unless you might just so happen to have some kind of nuclear reactor up there. We're not really finding those right now. So the most powerful thing we got in space right now is International Space Station, which has had like originally 100 kilowatts of power on board, but it's it's being upgraded with those new extensions they're putting on it. But they're also to make up for the degradation in the solar rays over the years. So and a 25 kilowatt satellite is huge. You'll see that thing. The solar rays are huge. It's like a quarter of the brightness of the International Space Station. So this isn't something that's going to be hiding stealthily. It's something you're going to see. And then again, even from a satellite like that, if you were firing a laser that had 25 kilowatts and you're firing it through the atmosphere, you're not going to get anything on the ground, especially enough to start a fire. And it would cost so much money and time and effort to target and set all this stuff up. It would be far cheaper and far more effective just to hire some numbskulls to go out and throw some Molotov cocktails or bottles and start fires on the ground. Now, some people have reported seeing things like that in some of the fires we had. It would be far more effective, far cheaper than using a satellite as a platform from which to start a fire. So this whole premise of the dews just don't make sense. I do think some of the fires are weird, and the way they were, conducted, like in the Paradise City area in California, how they burnt. Didn't really burn.
Well, I think the Paradise Fire. I covered the Paradise Fire from the time it started until. I think that it was mismanagement of the forest and tinderbox conditions and some problems with electrical lines arcing.
No, yeah, okay.
Because I mean that's just
so
what I did, and what I wanted.
So there's a fire that spread real quick, real fast, kind of a flashbang.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, we're accredited with saving almost 400 people's lives there from telling them the correct way to go out. In fact, some of my followers have been following me since then. So, that's how they learned about me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. So you're going to see yourself here just for a second. Okay. And then I'm going to bring this over here so as that your people and my people can see it together. Now, this is a high-powered military laser squadron. It's mobile optics for military applications. The effective range of this is not much more than 10,000 feet. That's 2 miles.
Yeah, just 2 miles.
Okay. Why is that?
The atmosphere dissipates the atmosphere.
There you go. There you go. The atmosphere dissipates it. And as you try to increase that energy through the atmosphere, you reach a point of saturation, and it doesn't matter how much power you put behind it, you're not getting any more through it.
Yep, exactly. So
And so
what's the power level on this laser you're showing us here?
I think it's like 20,000 watts.
See, that's
So it's not, that's
That's
low power.
that's at the threshold of the satellite capability I was talking about. You couldn't take the entire energy budget of the satellite and put it into laser all at once. So, and you're going to get hot. You and generate
Yeah.
atmosphere. It can generate heat, dissipate the heat through the air, but you don't have any working medium in space to dissipate the heat through. You got no conductive cooling in space at all. It's all radiative cooling. So you got to have some really large radiators in space to get rid of all the heat. And it's hard to do. It's hard to manage all that heat. So I see you must comment on that, whatever it was there. Yeah, that's your top line laser, 20,000 watts roughly, which is about the same power level I was talking about, an effective range of 2 miles. So how in the world are you going to be firing something all the way down from space, even if you fired it straight down and have any effectivity on the ground? You're not. Just firing it across the ground would be even worse. And this is a very expensive system, especially if you had it on a satellite. So why in the world would you even bother tasking a satellite to do a mission like that to create view fires when you can just hire some numbskulls and run around and throw Molotov's cocktails or whatever? I mean, that's a lot more cheaper and a lot more reliable. So it just don't make walking around sense, quite frankly.
No, it doesn't. And this is where the people say, "Oh, it's a do," and it's like the one that they claimed it started the fires in California. Well, I actually went and reviewed that video from Dutch Sense and the other people that had put these out, claiming that these lasers was firing in from space. Well, little problem there. And there's a big problem with people watching it. And so let's keep this in mind. First off, if we're going to fire a laser from space down to the ground to catch the ground on fire,
the space component
we would not use a frequency of light. Huh?
The space component wouldn't show because when you're in a vacuum of space, you can't see a laser. You can only see a laser when it's going through the atmosphere.
That's right. That's right. And then it'll be up.
It looks like there's a beam on it. There would be no beam. Only in the movie Star Wars do you see lasers in space. In reality, if you're shining a laser in space, you don't see it at all. You only see a laser is coherent light. What you see when you see a laser is the little bit of light that's bouncing off particles in the air. So you wouldn't see it. Yeah, you wouldn't see it in the first place. So it's obvious that what he's got in these photographs, especially since the laser always matches the color of the fire or whatever light source they're looking at, it's a lens effect. It's nothing but lens effect.
Well, I know, but this is the thing. This is the thing that I point out. If the laser is powerful enough, well, 2 points here. Number one, we're not going to use a frequency of light you're going to be able to see anyway.
There you go.
We don't use colored lasers for burning.
No.
Okay. So first off, it's not even going to be a frequency of light that you can see.
Yeah, that's inefficient.
Secondly, correct. Secondly, if you were going to use a laser that you could see with your naked eye, and it was powerful enough to come from space and catch something on fire on the ground, guess what? You would never take a picture of it with your camera because the intensity of that laser would be so bright, it would dazzle the shit out of the CCD, and you would just have ghosting and dazzling all over your camera screen. You wouldn't have a clean beam coming down.
Yeah.
Because you've seen a laser hit a target at night with night vision. Do you see how that dazzling does? If it's powerful enough to hit the ground and catch that ground on fire, you're going to have dazzling like you would not believe
that would be
from that.
One heck of a laser.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I've never seen one big enough to do that.
No.
And I've spent a lot of time with big, scary lasers.
Now, when we were talking missile defense and things like that, we were talking about using lasers, and the Russians had one in Series again. I mean, the Chinese have had one really large ground-based laser. You'd have to use an adaptive mirror that would adjust for the atmospheric distortions of the air as the different layers went in different directions. It would have to be totally adaptive to change various components of the laser beam, way they're pointed actually, so your emission rays would move a little bit. But yeah, it's just that's a very complex system, and from a ground-based laser, it's extremely hard to do something like that. For a space-based laser, it would be impossible, just due to the heat budget of the satellite. It would take a heck of a large satellite. I mean, these lasers, we're talking huge systems for something that could actually shine in space. They actually think that on one of our classified military missions that the Russians blinded some of our sensors with one. But they're not going to do structural damage to the show. You might blind sensors, but so it's interesting. Now in space, lasers can travel some distance. They're used for satellite to satellite communication. It's called laser links. Different satellites use lasers to talk to each other, and that's a very effective way to do it in space. And they're not getting all the distortion you get in the atmosphere. But there is beam spreading in space too. There's equations for the beams will actually spread out a little bit in space.
Right.
So, but the fire but here's the real clincher. They show these things as if they're firing miles across, and part of that, most of the track they're showing would have to be in space where there's a vacuum. You would not see a beam. You would not see
Correct.
a beam because there's nothing to reflect the light. And the beam is always, show me a case where the beam is a color other than the fire or whatever light source you're looking at. It's all something.
Well, I just tell them to show me the laser.
Yeah, show me the laser. That's a good
Where'd you fire it? How'd you power it? Where is it? And it's sticking way up there. So that's a geosynchronous orbit as opposed to a low Earth orbit.
That's even harder.
Right. Okay. So the
2,000 miles out, 22,500 miles up.
Right. So now you're going to say you're going to fire that 22,500 miles from the geostationary, and you go, oh no, it's a low Earth orbiting. Okay, if it's low Earth orbiting, how the hell do you get that thing to track good enough to hold that laser dot on that exact spot on the ground while that is going over?
The satellite in low Earth orbit is moving 17,500 miles per hour. It is booking across the sky. That's one heck of a tracking and control problem. And it don't make cost sense to even think about doing this kind of thing. If you want to start fires, if your objective is to create mayhem on ground, just hire some thugs.
Yeah. You go by and throw a pack of matches out the window. It's not,
there you go.
Well, right. It's not going to work the other way. So let's see.
So much as try laser engraving. Sure, you can do it on, laser right. What they do? Put the laser right over the target. Yeah, you can engrave with laser.
All right. So Bob says, has anyone figured out why the cars melted? Yeah, because they were aluminum and plastic. And why the trees were green right next to an incinerated house? Yes, because trees that are green don't burn, but houses that have been sitting there for years do, because a house that has been sitting there for years is the driest wood you'll ever see. Yeah. And the house goes up like a Roman candle and the tree doesn't burn. That's why when you have brush fires that go through the national forest, when they have controlled burns, the trees don't burn because they're green. In fact, if you want something to burn, then have a 90-degree edge on it or some type of an edge, because you can take a 2x4 and go into the middle of that 2x4. You can take a blowtorch and go right on that 2x4, right in the middle of that 2x4, and you can blow on that 2x4 for a minute with that blowtorch, and then you take that blowtorch off, and that 2x4 will go out. But if you go to the edge of that 2x4 on the corner, on the end of that 2x4, and you hold a lighter there, you'll catch that 2x4 on fire. Why? Because you're applying thermal energy to multiple sides. But when you only apply thermal energy to one side, when you remove that thermal heat source, it'll go out because it was only heated by one side.
Because it can dissipate the heat easier. It's got to do with heat
Correct.
dissipation and thermal soak. So if you throw enough heat in something, so that's really soaking it up, yeah, you can catch fire. And that's time is part of it. You know, it's time, temperature. There's several factors in that equation for what would make it heat up enough to catch on fire. But yeah, so
But
if you
two
have
exposed or three exposed surfaces will allow faster ignition, whereas that only a flat surface will not.
yeah, much harder.
It's one of the first things they taught me when I went to fire college.
Yeah,
In Ocala, you can go there and pick the course yourself if you like.
everything usually has a logical answer. Yep, that's true, Captain Trips. Sometimes we just don't look for it.
And most of the time, it's the simplest.
Right, Occam's razor. And Johan, the dancing gypsy, says inertia. I'm a gymnast. Yeah, inertia is very important.
So let's see here. No, we don't use dew, guys. Nobody starts a fire with lasers to start wildfires unless they're an arsonist. And if they're an arsonist, they're going to drive out by and start the fire. They're not going to purchase or lease an aircraft and then put, $1 million worth of spooky laser in it and fly over to start the fire. And then if they did, you could still track the aircraft. It's just, it doesn't. It's just bullshit, guys. So
somebody's talking about frying ants with a magnifying glass. Of course, who didn't? Most boys have done that. But you're right on top of it. The beam doesn't dissipate. You're right there, and you're focusing a whole lot of area down to a small point. A whole lot of sunlight across a big area to a small point. That will cause fire.
Yeah. But if you were to extend that distance, that capturing surface or lens would have to be much larger, because the farther you fire that light beam, the more energy it requires for you to fire it with the same intensity on the ground.
Right.
That's why when you fire a flashlight at the wall right in front of you, even if it's the same size beam, it's one intensity when you fire it at the wall. You go 100 yards away, even if the beam is the same diameter, it's going to be weaker when it hits that wall from 100 yards away because there's particles in the air. And every single one of those particles disperses energy from that beam to a point of where no energy goes through it at all.
That's why you're seeing a laser beam that's losing power. Every time every little kind of light you see represents a power loss from that laser beam. The farther it goes, the more power it loses.
Zip says we don't have a Dr. Evil out there. Well, no, I'm not saying that there's not a Dr. Evil out there. I'm just saying he's not going to use a laser like they do in the movies.
Okay. Yeah, there probably is a Dr. Evil.
L. Wiener says, can you combine the beams with other beams? Absolutely. In fact, there are multiple lasers that have more than one laser firing down the same optical path. And they'll use that for a designator and then for the targeting or the destructive laser. And they both fire down the optical path. But even though they still fire down the same optical path, and there are two lasers firing down that optical path, that does not change the resistance along the path. So it doesn't matter if you have one laser or you've got 100 lasers, the path is only going to be able to stand so much saturation. So it's like water tanks going into a garden hose. You can have one water tank hooked to the garden hose or two water tanks hooked to the garden hose, but it's not going to go through the garden hose any faster. Just like there's no more energy coming through the laser beam. And I used to have a sign in my office that said, dang, D-A-N-G, do not look into laser with remaining eye.
That's some good advice. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Instead of saying danger, it said dang. Do not look into laser with remaining eye. Because that's what I mean. We did the Pac 4 laser. We did the laser on the 50 cal on the Kiowa Warrior. I did laser rangefinders, laser illuminators. We did some laser tests with shooting down drones with Boeing right down there where you're at.
Oh
Remember
yeah.
that big Oshkosh truck with the thing out of the top of it?
Mm,
The big tan one? I'm the one that did the power for that. So, we were trying to do a laser that was battery powered.
yeah.
Because the problem we had with the truck that was down there where you're at was that 100 kW generator had to run all the time to have the
100
to have the
kW.
power for when
How big was that 100 kW generator?
the front half of a tractor trailer.
Bingo, exactly. That's a whole
Okay,
lot for satellite. So
right.
how far would
So,
that go?
oh, we could only fire up to like 30 or 40,000 feet with that.
Yeah.
That's all we were trying to do. We were
Wow.
trying to shoot down incoming artillery shells.
Right.
So we had some burn time, of them coming back down. So in that truck, what we were trying to do was put a huge battery bank in it and then let the weapon system fire off of the battery bank. And we were trying to give them about 150 fires off of that battery bank. Is when I say fires, I'm talking about being able to fire the laser. We would give them about 150 to 200 shots off of that battery bank before the generator would have to start again. That's what we were trying to do. But Boeing didn't have the money. Yeah, right there in your hand is what we were trying to shoot down. Little shit like that.
This is
Yeah.
This is an ATK rocket. Remember ATK? Northrop Grumman bought them out. It was basically they bought Vicol out. Now look, this rocket's got exhaust manifolds. Isn't that funny? Painted on the side of it.
Yeah.
So it's a 16-cylinder rocket. If you look, four ports per.
I own a Thiokol. Yeah.
Anyway, that's a funny.
That's how you get them to fly.
There you go. 16 cylinders. Had to be with exhaust manifolds like that. So I don't know. That's good for humor. It's got the rivets in it. Isn't it beautiful? That's a real retro rocket.
So James says feedback loop. Oddly, the weaker laser amplifies to the stronger. You can then fire plasma down the air channel. The laser effect. Does it sound something like? No, I'm not familiar with that, because if you were able to ionize the air to the point, if it was a plasma, you would hear that thing ionizing like a clap of thunder.
Thunder, yeah.
Because that's what thunder is the ionization, right? So you would have, every time you fired that laser, you would have an instantaneous clap of thunder because of the ionization of the atmosphere to bring it to the point of where you could fire a plasma through it, because plasma is thousands. Well, but even worse than that, if you're ionizing the plasma and you're trying to fire a laser beam through that, that ain't gonna happen.
So
if you're trying to fire a laser beam down through a plasma stream, can you imagine the soup that would be in that and how it would disperse that out? Yeah, I don't know how to make that work. I can't even think of how to make that work.
I think I want to try it. Afraid I get stabbed. Somebody's having a little fun.
That is not my rocket ship. My rocket ship is more advanced than that.
There you go. Hey, by the way, guys, there's some people, my mods are doing a good job at moderating today, and some of the people that are moderating are normally good regulars, but I try to keep my channel clean here because we're a family channel. So just remember that when you're leaving comments, don't say anything you wouldn't want your kids or grandkids to read, please. So we do want to keep the language clean. I know it's late on Sunday night and a few people are, filling their Wheaties tonight. So let's just be careful and mindful of things we say. Let's keep it all nice and clean. my mods are really on top of it. I know some people might be getting offended by that, but it's just, you know, the way we roll here on Green Graves. We try to keep it clean. So in any event, and thank you, mods. You're doing an excellent job tonight. So
Yeah, I mean, I let one fly every once in a while, but I try to keep it clean as well. We're the same way here.
yeah, I've usually let my mods take care of it. I got some really good mods, and some people complain to me about it later. But you know, we're just trying to keep it clean. We're trying to stay on air. There's some things you say, even in the chat room, get your channel in trouble. And I think you know more about that than anybody.
Gosh. Rutro 360 says you don't put your knowledge on social media, lame media. I put my knowledge anywhere that I can educate people.
Yeah.
And I don't share knowledge that I shouldn't share. So I don't say things that I shouldn't say. When you've been doing this for 30, 40 years, like Greg and I have, we know what we can talk about. We know what we can't talk about. You know, we're told specifically what we can and cannot talk about.
Willie Fitz says, is this the real Green Greg? Yeah, Greg Allison. I may be a worm farmer and a worm herder and a gardener and an urban prepper, suburban prepper, something like that. I do live 14 miles from town, but you know, I'm also I'm a rocket dude, guys. I'm an engineer. I've been doing this. You know, typically we used to always say that, you know, in rocketry, you have engineers. There's no rocket scientists, no true rocket scientists. But we actually did 300 test firings of these rocket motors, these hybrid rocket motors. And we did regression testing on them. We used scientific methods in doing that. So the fuel grains. So technically, I am a rocket scientist. There aren't many rocket scientists out there. But technically, because of what we did, and it was a research project, and we used scientific principles in doing that and developing and perfecting the hybrid rocket motor that makes the whole team, me and the whole team that was doing this, rocket scientist, if you looked at it from that angle. But I used to like to joke and tell people, though, I used to say, hey, I'm not a real rocket scientist. I just play one on TV. But no, we really were doing it, and it was quite an adventure. But I'm an electrical engineer. I was quite involved in rocketry. Is kind of more of mechanical engineering area, really. But a lot of my robotics work was mechanical engineering. No, I'm gonna get my degree down there. I'll go find it here in a second. Ah!
Hey, Bob Dobbs, you need to go back to the beginning of this video, and you can get educated about using gravity to drop metal from space. We already covered that. In fact, we even covered taking a Falcon 9 rocket, removing all of the atmosphere of Earth and firing that rocket directly at Earth. Yes, a sprite is lightning going up or a plasma discharge into the stratosphere for equalization of energy density between the Earth and space. Minimum, and we have more highly charged particles coming into our atmosphere. We're going to see even more of that.
I'm losing my stickers on here, like my magna cum laude stickers are falling off.
Uh-oh.
Where am I make it re-stick here? Maybe I need to put some new glue to it. I done lost one of them. Yeah, that ain't gonna stick. I'm gonna have to preserve that somewhere. But this is my degree. I went to the same university that Roy Spencer works for, and Roy Spencer, he indicated he'd come on my channel and do a video, but we haven't coordinated the time. So I don't know if we're going to get all that put together. So my degree is Bachelor of Science.
Yeah, I really like Roy. So let me know when you.
Yeah, Bachelor of Science in Engineering, and it's electrical option. So UAH is a kind of a general degree for engineering across the board, but it specializes in electrical engineering. So I'm an electrical engineer, but I've got a broad core in general engineering. So, by the way, I got something you might be excited to see. Look what I got here.
Oh, wow. I used to have one of those.
25 dinars.
Yeah, and I had one of the packs of matches that they dropped over there. You remember those?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is several years ago when I had when somebody convinced me to shave my beard off, short hair, and it happened to be when my daughter graduated from high school. So
That was too fast. I never saw it.
oh, that's my youngest daughter and I.
There we go. Wow. Actually, you look familiar with the beard off.
I do. You might have seen me. I don't know.
Yeah. My God, I might have.
I look
Did you ever
more
work
like
with
a
Recon
cigarette.
Optical?
Huh?
Did you ever work with ROI, Recon Optical Incorporated, on the
No.
Boeing Avenger missile launcher?
No. I did
Okay.
work. I did work SDIO. Strategic. I actually worked for USM. Well, it was SDC back in the time, Strategic Missile.
The Defense Initiative. So
Right,
did
right.
I.
I
SDI.
worked in the ARIS project office. It's exoatmospheric reentry interceptor subsystem. So,
Well, yeah, I don't think that's might have where I see.
but that was back in the 80s. That was like in the late
Yeah.
80s. And in 89, I went to work for a company called Pentastar, and I was working on the M1 tank at that point in time.
Did you ever do anything with IBAS or ITAS on the Bradley?
No, but my group was M1 group, but the Bradley guys were right next door to us. I worked the thermal imager some on
Okay.
the M1 tank. So I had
Well, well, then maybe that's where, because we tested that at Huntsville.
yeah.
Because see, I worked with Graflex, and we did the Brad Ganther out of Huntsville did the long range low light camera. Brad Ganther owned Graflex.
Okay, I had a friend named Gaithier who worked at PI Pentastar. Gaithier, okay, that's a little different guy. So,
But so we did the Abrams independent thermal viewer.
okay.
And then we moved from that over to IBAS, improved Bradley acquisition site, and ITAS, improved tow acquisition site. And I was there in Huntsville when there were only 3 Bradleys in the world with the Omnibus 4 viewer on it. And I was there when they fired the first tows at Huntsville out of the IBAS. Right there, we were southeast of the big tall tower out on the range. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Big tower on the range.
Yeah.
Exactly. Of course.
Yeah.
Hey, we got
Right.
We got Rex in the house here. Leak Project says, I found out how small a star can be. You're a star. Okay, Rex, we'll take that one. So Renee Link says, ever fire any Patriot missiles? I haven't, but my son did. My son worked Patriot missile batteries. He was stationed at Fort Bliss for a while. And he also went to, my son went to Kuwait and into Iraq during the last Gulf War we had out there. Willie Fixer says M1A1. Yeah, the M1A1 Abrams, I worked that. So what's up, Rex? Rex is in the house here. He's chimed in. And let's see who else we got. So Rex has been very generous here. So let's see here. Lee, talking about these projects, you might, how long did you stay in Huntsville when you were in Huntsville? Did you ever go to any of the space talks that were held in the library and other places like that?
I only went to, and I can't remember. So, down when you come off. So I did IBAS, ITAS on the Bradley. I
Yeah.
did the Lantern Pod, the Commander's Independent Thermal Viewer on the M1A1 or A2 then, and the upgrade for the Avenger missile launcher. And then I did a power upgrade for the Patriot missile launcher. And so those were the only projects I worked on. Well, and the laser, the big scary laser. That's all I ever worked on in Huntsville. And I only went to 2 meetings off of Huntsville, and both of those were down at where the big Saturn V rocket lays at the museum.
Okay. Well, I've done a couple of things there, meeting wise. So it's possible we could have ran into each other there. Well, I spent 22 years I was the founding president of Huntsville, Alabama L5 Society. After 21 years, actually at the first 20, I passed it off to somebody for a year, and I took it back. So 21 of the first 22 years of the society's group's history, I was president. And I did come back for a year a couple of years ago and served as president again. And they gave me a plaque on our 30th anniversary for being a founder.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
we were the group that started the high altitude. It was my idea to come up with this high altitude liftoff program, HALO. You hear me saying HALO, that's where I'm coming from. And we made the Guinness Book of World Records, and we spun off a company called High Altitude Research Corporation. And we did motors like the one here, which led to things like Richard Branson flying in space today. I'll say, so Rex is over in the Four Corners, cell towers, just cell towers and Four Corners. So what's mysterious about the cell towers? What's going on there, Rex? They got something odd about them. They look like trees. They look like chimney rocks. They launching something. Rex is talking about some shining towers that are cell towers in the Four Corners area. So Rex is saying halo. So Four Corners area, that's not a long distance from my property there in Arizona. So yeah, I do have some 40 acres out there that I'm hoping to get out to before too long. So it's possible you might have went to a program we had, Lee. Because I've run programs and attended.
Well, and there was a couple other. Then there was 2 others that I forgot to mention: Blimp in a Box and Combat SkySat.
Combat SkySat. And I was kind of a little bit involved with some of the guys doing one of those. What was that project called? I can't remember that. We launched a balloon for them to test some of the instruments. It was kind of like that. It was a rapid setup radar or something you put on the ground. I forget now. It's been several years, but I supported some guys in a project like that. And we had the Blimp in a Box up here. Yeah.
So I did Blimp in a Box, and then I did the air sondes for White Sands. So the tan box that has the blimp on it at White Sands, it says White Sands Missile Range right on the back of the box. So it's a trailer that pulls behind a truck, and a satellite goes off, or a giant balloon is on top of that. And there's sondes that go down the line all the way down to the bottom. So when they launch the missile, they know the barometric pressure, the temperature, and the wind direction all the way up to the height of the balloon at 3,000 feet or whatever it is. I did all the training for that out at White Sands as well. But you look familiar in that picture. So
possibly ran across.
I've got
most of my life.
When you're in Huntsville, it ain't that big of a place.
No, it's not. We used to call it Hunts Patch, But it's growing. They say by the end of this year, it's going to be the biggest city in Alabama. Right now, it's the 3rd largest. So that means it's going to be growing a whole lot real fast.
Well, with the new FBI facility that's going in there.
Yeah, we got a huge FBI facility going in on the arsenal. But there's just a lot of other stuff just moving in. Huntsville is just growing. It's just growing leaps and bounds, which kind of makes me think more about getting way out in the middle of nowhere, like in the desert. High desert.
Yeah.
So,
all right, my friend. Well, it is getting late in the evening for you, I'm sure.
Yeah, it is. It's 11:38 here. Rex is talking about massive towers in the middle of nowhere disguised as trees. So how could you what sense does it make to disguise something as a tree where there's no trees?
Oh, it's the same as when we were dropping the sensors in Vietnam for detecting the Viet Cong, and they had chosen a shiny green leaf made out of plastic for this fake plant, and they would fly over and drop these in the woods, and nothing else in the forest matched them.
Yeah.
So we knew exactly where, or the Viet Cong knew exactly where we were looking because we were putting sensors down. They would see the sensors, and then they would send people in there to pad on the ground around the sensors.
Yeah.
And they knew how long it would take for military aircraft to get there. So they would find these sensors. One guy would find the sensor in the wood, and he would go back to the command and say, hey, we found one over here. And they were going, okay, go out and trip it. So they would go out there and bang a bunch around on the ground next to the sensor. One guy, but he's right next to it. So it makes it look like there's a whole lot of traffic there. And then we would send out airstrikes, and then the guy would just ride off on his bicycle, and we would drop $1 million worth of bombs on nothing.
That's funny. That's what they wanted us to do. So,
Yep.
so they patted on the ground and made it sound like the area was really busy.
Right. All right, my friend. Well, I thank you very much for your time, and let's plan on doing this again so as that we can actually, pass the truth and share the truth and
All right.
let people know what the truth is.
All right. And woe to them that want to jump on us, right?
And what?
I said, woe to them that want to jump on us.
Yeah. Truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth.
All right.
Because
So
the biggest problem is there's too many people who think they know what they're talking about and don't, and they are misleading people who want to know what they're talking about. And it is harder to unlearn something than it is to learn it correctly the first time. It's, in fact, I think it's 7 times harder
Oh yeah.
to get rid of bad information and replace it with accurate information. So I'm all about accurate information. If you can't tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, I don't want to hear it.
Well,
I ain't got time for it.
We just use physics. Physics is physics. So we
Right. If you stick to the physics and the knowns and things that you can prove, or things that on my channel, I got 270 channels on our news network, over 270 channels now. And you can put anything in there you want. You just have to also bring the supporting evidence. So if you have no evidence of it, you can't claim it. We'll remove it or tell you not to post it. Because, the size of a star has to be at least 17 times the size of Jupiter, not the size of our moon. So.
Yeah.
Well, no, we're not the all-knowing or knows it all. I'm a subject matter expert. And so within that subject, I am an expert. You go outside of that expert, or outside of that technology, or outside of that subject, I'm as dumb as a box of rocks, because there's lots of things that I don't know anything about. But when I do know something about it, I do know something about it. And if I don't know, I won't say shit. If I do know, I'll pipe up. So, well, Goat Dragon, you're going to have to rewind, because we've got a 2 hours and 27 minutes worth of SME, subject matter expert, not SMH. And so I'm a SME and I'm an LTE. So I'm a subject matter expert in electronics, plasma, communications, energy, weapon systems, things of that nature. And I'm an LTE, which is the lead technical integrator. That's the guy that wires all that stuff up. And I'll be the first to admit, I am not a computer expert, but what plugs into that computer, whether it be a weapon system or a radio or a satellite link or encryption or a sighting system or anything of that nature, that's where I'm at. So when people talk about those things, I can talk about those things.
There you go.
But if you talk about making biscuits, I can't help you.
No, wait.
My wife takes care of that.
Now, I can cook
She's my expert on
I
that.
can cook.
But I can't. I am not a cook. I can't boil water. I can't make ice. I am not a cook. If you want to take your life in your own hands, eat in my kitchen. Okay. But, you know, I can kill the animal. I can bring him to you. I can do all that. And I can make a steak or something like that. But as far as, and I used to do lasagnas and stuff like that, and cakes, but it's been a long time and I can't cook worth shit anymore.
Yeah,
I'll kill me, you, and everybody else that eats it. Do
I
what?
can make some killer biscuits and gravy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, then we're gonna have to eat, buddy. That's one of my favorite foods.
Well, when I was in the military, the closest thing I got to was SOS. And I know you know what that is.
Yeah.
In polite lingo, it's stuff on a shingle.
Yeah.
But in the military, that's not the way we said it. We weren't so polite.
Yeah. Sausage on a single.
Oh, there you go. That's not what we
Well,
said.
they got all over us. They got all over us about saying kiss. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah, really?
So I changed that to keep it super simple.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So yeah, there's still a couple of my sayings still running around in the Army here, there, and yonder from years and years ago, like proper pre-planning prevents piss poor performance.
Yeah.
My dad came up with that when I was a kid. I've been saying it for 40 years, 50 years.
Well, I'm going to Judy Dowell's to eat tonight.
So-
She's having fresh zucchini bread. All right.
And Rut-Row 360, what are we wrong about? I just love these people that come in and say we're wrong. I mean, if we're wrong, say what we're wrong about, and then put some supporting evidence. If you don't have supporting evidence and you claim we're wrong, I'm going to boot you out of here because you have nothing to substantiate your claim. So if you want to make a claim and what?
You'll have Daisy back there toe off.
Yeah. So yeah, anyway, and of course I see here that Al says he knows everything.
Yeah, Al Gore he's on both of us tonight.
Oh, appreciate.
Good thing we
Right.
got.
And I appreciate you, Doc. See, yeah, I'm sure Cuba is in a state of emergency. And Doc says, amen to that, not being a computer expert. See, I've even got Doc backing me up on what I say. And what are you going to say to him? I mean, he's even on another country, in another continent.
There
I
you
mean,
go.
it's not like he's just down the road. He knows from the other side of the world, he knows I'm right. See?
All right. Well, guys, it's been fun. We've covered a lot of ground tonight. So I know there's probably a person or two aren't happy over it. I got 9 dislikes. That's interesting. You know, I'd prefer if somebody don't like something.
Oh, that's because I'm on here.
They chime in and say why. So that would be a good thing if somebody would do that.
Yeah, it's because I'm on here. I always get the dislikes. You wouldn't believe all the. I mean, there's some shows I go on and everybody there calls me a liar, but yet they have no evidence to substantiate it. So
Yep.
Is what it is. So I've just decided I ain't gonna do any of those shows anymore. If they're not smart enough to tell that I'm telling the truth, then I don't need to be there. My dad told me when I was a kid, never argue with an idiot because he ain't smart enough to figure out that you're right.
Oh well. Alrighty, guys. Well, it's been an
No,
interesting program.
it's allowed.
We've covered a lot of territory here tonight, so hope everybody has a super Sunday night and a wondrous week ahead. So go back here to my regular YouTube.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, sir. It's been a pleasure. Appreciate you doing this joint thing here with me.
All right.
And we will do it again at your convenience, my friend.
All right, everybody take care. And
I
have a
like to
great
speak
night.
with intellectuals.
All righty. Got that. All right, everybody. Have a good night. Thank y'all for watching. Thank you, mods, for everything you're doing. For keeping the chat decent. And everybody that's been a guest, appreciate you coming in here tonight. and we'll all catch up with you later. Great night. Bye-bye.
Sounds good. Good night, everybody.
Oh, I thought I was recording this. I did.
I did. You can get it off mine.